Hey everyone, how are you guys doing?
Doing great, Judge. How about you?
I'm doing well. Can you guys look around and just confirm that your teams and witnesses and everything are all here? And if not, just if we need to wait a few minutes, there's nothing wrong with that either.
Your Honor, it looks like the plaintiff is still waiting on its witnesses to arrive, but I expect they're going to be on any moment.
Okay. How about the defense?
Everybody is here from the defense, Your Honor.
Well, the defense gets 10 bonus points then. Feel free to relax, guys, while we wait for everyone to get in here. This is new. Well, it's probably not new for you guys anymore. It's new for me. So as a result of that, I'm willing to be all kinds of accommodating.
Your Honor, I've just been informed by one of our witnesses that they are sitting in the waiting room. I believe they have to be approved to join the call.
All right, I'll approve them.
And Your Honor, as I see it, everyone from the plaintiff is here and we are ready to go.
Okay. Does anyone? Oh, we just had someone and then they left. Is anyone missing a Nate?
No, Your Honor.
Not from the plaintiff.
What about the defense?
Not from the defense, Your Honor.
All right, so that was just some Russian hacker. Okay, good. All right, so is everybody here and ready, all set to go?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff's ready to proceed.
Okay, and I think we've got our jurors as well. Let me confirm that. In this list of people, do I have 3 jurors?
One of 3. Robert Crawford's here.
Okay, got Robert,
Jordan is here as well.
got Jordan, and who's our third?
Mary DeSluver's here.
Say that again. Oh, Mary.
Mary
Okay, great.
DeSluver, hi.
All right, we are all set to go then. Then let's get back to where I need to go. Sorry, I've got all these different documents on different emails, so I'm trying to jump between all of them. Okay, so it looks like we're here for the next round of this year's Summit Cup tournament. Will the attorneys please enter their appearances?
Yes, good evening, Your Honor. My name is Molly Sue Harmon, here on behalf of the plaintiff, and I'm joined in this trial by my co-counsel, Mr. Chance Stirrup.
Good evening, Your Honor.
Good evening.
We're here representing Cam Donaldson, who is here on behalf of his late father, Lou Donaldson.
Okay. Chance, could you spell your last name for me? I apologize, I'd forgotten it already.
Yes, Your Honor. It's Sturup.
Stir. Okay, got it. Okay, and for the defense.
Good evening, Your Honor. My name is Bridget Fasano. That's Fassano. And today I am joined by my co-counsel, Nahir
Good
Nana.
afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Nahir Nanavati. That's spelled Nanavatty.
Today we represent the defendant in this matter, Ms. Karen Baja. We are Team Longs Peak.
Okay. All right, I just saw a message from someone, and bear with me here. Oh, is that Mr. Novotny? Is that you saying you're experiencing technical difficulties?
Yes, Your Honor. Everything on my screen is coming in and out every 2 or 3 seconds, so I'm not really hearing that well.
Okay.
If that continues, I'll let you know.
Okay. Hang on, I'm getting messages from others who are watching us. Give me 1 second here. Click the view in the upper right. Oh, I see. Okay. Oop. All right, let me send a quick message back, see if that fixed my problem. Oh. Sorry, it looks like we're going to move a juror. Sorry, guys, for the technical difficulties here. We'll figure this out. Good thing we've got, each got 50 different communication devices here that we can use. Ms. Thornlow, are you still in the courtroom as a juror?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Guys, give me 1 second here. Let me see what I'm supposed to do. Hey, buddy. All right, Ms. Thornlow, looks like you're staying.
Sounds good.
Okay. All the jurors in the room, do you know anyone on either team to a degree that will affect your ability to provide an unbiased evaluation in this case?
Negative.
How about the other
I
two?
don't know anyone in the group at all.
I'm all
Great.
set. Yep, don't know anyone.
Okay. And is the plaintiff ready to proceed then?
Yes, Your Honor, we're ready to proceed with housekeeping matters.
And is the defense ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor. We have one stipulation and one motion to eliminate that we will be bringing prior to trial.
Oh, okay. Sorry, let me pause you for 1 more second. Apparently I've done something wrong. Speaker, just click view again.
page first. That,
Thanks for bearing with me, guys.
this is what, just like tonight, when you logged in, you're going to see this is his home page. And then what you're going to do is you're going to go over to competition schedule, and then go down to round 1. Let's say you're.
Can you guys hear that other sound as well?
Yes, Your Honor.
Did it go away?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, let's give this a shot then. All right. All right. So before we get to any of the housekeeping matters or anything like that, all right, we started the live stream. Everyone, please raise your right hand. All the participants anyway. And I think witnesses too. Please indicate by saying "I do" if you swear to abide by the rule of this proceeding and conduct yourself in a manner that is honorable to this forum.
I do.
I do.
All right. Anybody I don't? Great. Okay. We are now calling case number 082263, Cam Donaldson versus Karen Basha. Are there housekeeping matters to which the court needs to attend?
Yes, Your Honor. We have a few housekeeping matters as well as some stipulations and one motion to make today.
All right. What do you got?
First, Your Honor, because of this digital format, we would just like to encourage you that if at any point you can't hear us or see us, just interrupt and let us know so we can adjust any technical difficulties.
I can certainly do that, or at least try.
Yes, Your Honor. And in the interest of time, we would request that all witnesses be assumed constructively sworn in.
You may, yes.
Your Honor, we would just like to confirm that time will stop for objections today.
Yes, I believe that is the case. We have timekeepers in the room, and I believe that's the instruction given to them. Yes.
Yes, Your Honor. And we would also like to request that all objection arguments be constructively assumed to be made out of the jury's presence because of this digital format, but that we would be allowed to make them in open court today.
Absolutely.
And finally, Your Honor, we would like to draw your attention to two stipulations that the parties have agreed on today. We have agreed that throughout the trial, it is not bifurcated and damages are at issue. And as such, the plaintiff will be presenting evidence of damages throughout the case.
Okay, that's the defense's understanding as well?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. And what's the other stipulation?
And additionally, you may hear some testimony either by video from a man whose legal name is Exotic Bob, as well as a reading of a deposition from a man whose legal name is Carl Bannister. Both of these parties are unavailable for the purposes of hearsay today.
Okay, defense, that's your understanding as well?
Yes, Your Honor. They are stipulated as unavailable. However, their testimony itself is still subject to objection.
Understood. Okay. Any other housekeeping matters from the defense?
That's all housekeeping from the plaintiff, Your Honor.
Oh, from the plaintiff. Anything from the defense?
We're ready to go, Your Honor.
Okay. Motions in limine. Are there any that the plaintiff would like the court to address before we begin?
Yes, Your Honor. We have two. The first of which we have agreed to in pre-trial. We have agreed to exclude from evidence a piece of evidence that is marked as the Sheriff's Office Vehicle Maintenance Report Form that states marked as 17. And we agreed in pre-trial that this will be excluded today.
Okay, and that's defense's understanding as well?
So stipulated to, Your Honor.
Okay. Anything else from the plaintiff?
Yes, Your Honor. My co-counsel, Mr. Chance Stirrup, will address our second motion.
All right.
Yes, Your Honor. I actually spoke with defense counsel just before trial, and we were able to come to an agreement on an exhibit in today's case. It's a request for a temporary restraining order by the decedent, Lou Donaldson, against the defendant, Karen Basha. It's dated for June 12th. We've agreed to strike from that exhibit what's labeled as paragraph 1. However, we have also agreed that the remainder of the exhibit may be admitted during trial today. Defense counsel has agreed to waive further objections. So that the parties have stipulated to that as well. Additionally, we do have one motion to also put in front of you if you're ready to hear that.
All right. Before we do that, let me just check with defense counsel. Is that your understanding in terms of that exhibit?
Yes, Your Honor. The temporary restraining order was stipulated to, but that first paragraph will be redacted and not seen by the jury throughout this trial.
Terrific. Okay. Then let's move on to plaintiff's motion.
Yes, Your Honor. In speaking to the defense before trial, we learned that they plan to call to the stand an insurance investigator that looked into this case. And we actually have his report as part of the record in this trial. Now, in his report, he details several pieces of information that he learned about a police investigation that took place into the incident in question today. And his report details that he learned this information solely through the use of an anonymous contact, and he's refused to reveal who that anonymous contact is. So we would move to exclude the evidence learned exclusively through that anonymous contact by way of hearsay, because of course that contact, his statements are hearsay. And additionally, under Rule 403, because we can't cross-examine this person, the unreliability of these statements and this information creates such a substantial prejudicial value that it outweighs any probative effect.
All right, from the defense, any response?
Yes, Your Honor. Pursuant to Federal Rules of Evidence 703, an expert may base their opinion on facts and data, in this case, that the expert has been made aware of or personally observed. Even if that testimony would otherwise be inadmissible, 703 allows that testimony to come in so long as the expert reliably applied it to their conclusion. This expert used that information that he got from the anonymous police agent, and he then applied it to his conclusion. Under 703, that testimony would be allowed because it reasonably applied to his conclusion.
What did this investigator learn that we're trying to keep out?
Your Honor, may I have that information?
You may.
Your Honor, specifically, this expert alleges that he learned from this anonymous contact that there was DNA testing done and that no results came up, that there was a search for blood or signs of a struggle and that no evidence was found, and that the police are aware of some type of alibi, even though we don't know what that alibi is, for the defendant on the night in which her husband disappeared. Now, if I may address the 703 argument.
Sure.
Your Honor, Rule 703 has a very strict balancing test for allowing an expert to talk about inadmissible evidence. Rule 703 provides that the probative value of that evidence must substantially outweigh the prejudicial effect. And in this case, given the severe unreliability of this hearsay information and our inability to cross-examine or test the veracity of the information, that prejudicial effect certainly is not substantially outweighed by the probative value. Additionally, Your Honor, this argument would be premature, as we would object if this expert intends to offer expert conclusions based off of this information. We understand he's going to be an expert in handwriting analysis, but this information doesn't relate to handwriting.
Your Honor, may I respond?
You may, briefly.
I want to take those one by one. As to the argument for Ms. Baja's alibi, Ms. Baja will be here testifying today, and opposing counsel will have the opportunity to cross-examine Ms. Baja herself on the alibi that she gave to the police. Furthermore, Your Honor, this expert is a handwriting analyst, but he's also a death claims investigator for an insurance company. He analyzed the will and last testament of Lou Donaldson and looked into the police investigation into Ms. Baja to determine whether or not the $5 million life insurance policy should be paid out. Your Honor, this witness used that information directly to come to their conclusion. And furthermore, the probative value of the fact that the police have not been able to find evidence linking Ms. Baja to any alleged meat grinder or blood evidence or DNA evidence or lack of a struggle, that evidence is very probative in today's case, as opposing counsel is alleging that Ms. Baja murdered her husband.
All right. Court's going to withhold ruling on the motion when and if it comes up during the course of trial. Plaintiff, feel free to raise the objection then. Obviously, we've discussed it already. It'll make a ruling a little easier when we see this happen in context and we can figure out what we need to do with that piece of evidence if it comes up.
Certainly, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Any further motions from the plaintiff?
Your Honor, we're ready for opening statements.
Okay. Any motions in limine from the defense before we begin?
Yes, Your Honor. We have one stipulation and one motion that we will be bringing today.
Okay. What's that stipulation?
As to this stipulation, it's been stipulated by and between counsel that there will be no evidence, testimony, or argument about my client's previous misdemeanor conviction when she was 17 years old.
All right. Is that plaintiff's understanding?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. All right. And then you said you had a second motion.
Yes, Your Honor. The defense moves for the exclusion of the video and transcript of a man named Exotic Bob, as it is hearsay. By way of background, Exotic Bob is currently incarcerated, and he blames the defendant, Ms. Baja, for his incarceration. Would Your Honor like to see the transcript that we are talking about in order to better understand this?
No, I think I have an idea of what we're talking about.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, Exotic Bob took it upon himself to create this video at no request by either party, in which he sings a song and makes accusations about our client. Although it has been stipulated that Exotic Bob is an unavailable witness, that is the only thing that has been stipulated to. We did not stipulate to the admissibility of this document. And as Your Honor is aware, under 804, unavailability is not enough. There needs to be something else in order to constitute a hearsay exception. Here, this transcript does not meet any of those exceptions or additional prongs in order to make it admissible under 804, and therefore we ask that the document and video are excluded.
All right. Any response from the plaintiffs?
Yes, Your Honor. We only plan to show a clipped version of this video, only the portions that are going to be relevant to this trial. And that portion is going to include very specifically statements from the defendant in which she told this man that she would kill him just like she did her husband. And this took place after Lou Donaldson's disappearance. Your Honor, the statements from the defendant, those are party opponent statements, and by definition under Rule 801, they're just not hearsay. Additionally, any statements by Exotic Bob, well, his independent statements we have no use for, and we're not going to use them for the truth or argue their truth in front of the jury. If there's any other layer of hearsay, Your Honor, as he's an unavailable witness, the exception of statement against interest would be available for these statements. Your Honor, in the broader context of this video, this man is talking about an illegal transaction that he entered into with the defendant to import endangered animals. He's admitting to committing a crime with her. So these statements would fall against his interest as they're an admission of a crime. Therefore, they're accepted from hearsay under Rule 804.
May I be heard, Your Honor?
You may.
May we publish the zoomed in portion that we are discussing here just for clarification?
Certainly.
Mr. Nanavati, would you mind putting up that zoomed in portion of the document? Thank you. Now, Your Honor, I'm going to read this aloud just so that we can understand. This is the portion that we're discussing here. It says, now at the end of that meeting, Karen Baja walking out of my office. She stopped suddenly and turned around, and she came marching back to my desk. And she leaned over and she looked me right in the eye and she said, Exotic Bob, because that's me. Exotic Bob, she said, Exotic Bob, I swear if you double cross me on this deal, I will do exactly to you as I did to my husband. She said, there won't be no disappearance, no mythical flight to Costa Rica. She goes, that your last supper will be you. I'll feed you to my kitties just like I did him. And she turned around and she walked out of my office. And that's all I have to say about that. Now, Your Honor, to be a statement against interest, it needs to be a statement against the interest of the speaker. Clearly, this is not a statement against interest of Exotic Bob. This is a statement against interest of my client. And if opposing counsel is wanting to admit this to show that Exotic Bob was engaging in illegal transactions, then any mention of my client should not be included in that, as that is not a statement against his own interest. Therefore, this document does not fall under the 804 exception of statement against interest, and it should be excluded.
Okay, I think I understand the arguments at this point in time. I'm not entirely sure that I fully understand the context under which this exhibit may be brought, made part of the evidence in this trial. So I'm going to withhold ruling on this motion as well. So please feel free to bring up the evidence and bring up your objections during the course of trial, when I'll be able to make a bit more of an informed ruling at that point in time.
Yes, Your Honor. And with that, the defense is ready to proceed.
Okay. Plaintiff's opening statement.
Yes, Your Honor. May it please the court. He's never coming home. Not I hope he comes home. Not I pray he comes home, he's never coming home. Those are the words of the defendant, Karen Baja, a woman who was fueled by a fear of divorce, fueled by a desperation to keep everything she had. Two things that on August 18th, 2012 became a deadly combination for her husband, Lou Donaldson. Now today you're gonna learn about Lou. And Lou was a hardworking man from right here in Statesville. He built his way from the bottom up to the top and became one of the most successful businessmen here in town. But even with all of that success, Lou wanted someone to share it with. Someone to be there through the good and the bad times. And today you'll learn he completed that picture by marrying the defendant. Someone he loved. Someone he thought he'd be with forever. He took care of her. He created a life for her that most of us can only imagine. And together they created one of the world's largest private animal sanctuaries, Wild Wildlife. Now, Lou didn't do it for the money. Lou did it because he loved big cats. Animals that had been purchased as pets that never should have been. Animals that had grown too large and their owners couldn't take care of anymore, but they couldn't be released into the wild. Animals that needed a home. But no matter how much they loved the big cats, the love they had for each other, well, it started to fizzle out. You see, members of the jury, like so many marriages today, the Donaldsons' marriage started to unravel. Lou, he'd had enough, and he told the defendant he wanted a divorce. A decision he had no idea would turn deadly. From the moment the defendant heard that word, divorce, the panic set in. The house, the money, the cars, the animal sanctuary, she was going to lose it all. He couldn't do that to her. She wouldn't let him do that to her. No matter who got hurt, no matter what it would take. Well, it took just 14 days, 2 short weeks from the moment the defendant heard the word divorce until she started to carry out a plan on how to kill Lou Donaldson. Plan on how to kill him, but more importantly, a plan on how to get away with it. On August 18th, 2012, Lou Donaldson disappeared, never to be seen or heard from again. You'll hear from the defendant herself that he's never coming home. Well, what about on the 19th? Surely the defendant's out there looking for him. Instead, the defendant was down at the sanctuary because she didn't trust Cam. She was taking Lou's will, a will that the defendant was desperate to get her hands on. Now, what about the next day? Surely by August 20th, she's out there looking for Lou. Well, instead, she's down at the sanctuary, firing Lou's son, Cam, and taking over the sanctuary. Because for the defendant, well, it was business as usual. By the end of it all, the defendant had gotten exactly what she wanted. The house, the money, the cars, the animal sanctuary. Her plan had worked. Or so she thought. She didn't plan on all of the questions. Questions from people like Cam Donaldson. Now, we're here today representing Cam, and you'll learn that he's Lou's son from his first marriage. Cam will tell you a little bit about the relationship he had with his dad and how close they were, and how he knew his dad wouldn't just go missing, to not call, to not say goodbye, to not even send a letter. Cam knew something wasn't right, and for years he has waited for answers. Now, many say that a lawsuit is the search for the truth. That's why we're here today. That's why Cam brought this lawsuit. Now, this is a special kind of case called a wrongful death lawsuit. And by bringing this, we have to prove 4 elements. First, that Lou is dead. Second, that it was the defendant's intentional or reckless conduct that caused that death. Third, that Cam has suffered a loss. And fourth, that it was the defendant's conduct that caused that loss. Now, we have to prove this to you by a preponderance of the evidence. Members of the jury, let me be clear. This is not a murder trial, as much as we wish it were. It's a job for the government, and we're here in the civil system today. And the civil system has its own burden and its own rules. And the burden in the civil system is by a preponderance of the evidence. That's just a fancy way of saying more likely than not. We are confident that at the end of today's case, after you've seen all of the exhibits and heard all of the testimony, that we will have met that burden. And to do that, we're going to put a few witnesses on the stand today. First, you'll hear from Cam Donaldson. He'll tell you a little bit about the relationship he had with his dad, how close they were, how painful losing his father has been, and what this has done to his family. He'll tell you a little bit about the relationship between the defendant and his father, that divorce was on the table, and that things were tense for the Donaldsons. You'll also hear from Taylor Pride, a licensed private investigator who you'll learn Cam hired to look into the disappearance of his father. Ms. Pride will tell you that through all of the searching, they never found Lou. Ms. Pride will also tell you a little bit about the will and its authenticity and how it was unusually worded. Now, we expect the defense will call some witnesses of their own today to try to dispute this. You'll likely hear from the defendant herself, who will try to tell you a story of how much she loved Lou. But she knew he was never coming home. You'll also likely hear from Chris Renard, an insurance investigator. Ms. Renard will tell you that she completed her investigation by the book. That means she did nothing less than she had to do, but it certainly means she did nothing more than was required. Members of the jury, I want you to listen closely throughout today's case and keep 3 questions in mind. Who was afraid of divorce? Who was desperate to keep everything she had? Who resorted to deception? We are confident that at the end of today's case, you will have learned the answer to all 3 of those questions is the defendant herself. That it was her fear of divorce and her desperation to keep her lifestyle that became a deadly combination for her husband, Lou Donaldson. And at the end of today's case, we're going to come before you and ask that you hold the defendant liable for Lou's death. We're going to ask that you make her pay for what she's done. Because Lou, well, he's never coming home. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Is defense ready to present its opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor.
Whenever you're ready.
May it please the court. This is not a case about murder. This is a case about money. This is a case between a wife and her stepson over her missing husband's $10 million estate. When there's a family dispute over $10 million, things can get ugly pretty quick. This case is a perfect example of just how ugly family disputes over money can get. You see, the plaintiff, Cam Donaldson, has brought his own stepmother, Karen Baja, to court today, and he's falsely accusing her of murder. But what you'll learn today is that this is not a case about murder. It's a case about money. So to understand how we got here, I need to take a step back to August of 2012, when Lou Donaldson disappeared. When Lou disappeared, he left behind two very important people in his life. His wife of 20 years, Karen Baja, and his son from a previous marriage, Cam Donaldson. 2012 was a year that drastically changed both Karen and Cam Donaldson's life. Neither of them would ever speak to or hear from Lou Donaldson ever again. But what you'll learn today is that for the next 5 years, both Karen Baja and Cam Donaldson went about their lives as normal until 2017, when everything changed. You see, in 2017, 5 years after Lou Donaldson disappears, Cam Donaldson finds out that his father left the entirety of his $10 million estate to his wife, Karen Baja. Cam Donaldson finds out he won't be inheriting a single penny. Cam is furious. That anger grows into resentment and hatred. And with his dad out of the way, there's only one person who he can point that anger at. And that's Karen Baja. And how does he point that anger at Karen Baja? By falsely accusing her of murder and filing this lawsuit for $10 million. My co-counsel, Ms. Bridget Fasano, and I have the great pleasure of representing Karen Baja today. Karen Baja is the owner of a local sanctuary for large cats called Wild Wildlife, and she loves nothing more in her free time than taking care of those animals. You're going to learn that Lou Donaldson is the love of Karen Baja's life. Now, their marriage certainly had its fair share of ups and downs, but you're going to learn that Karen loved Lou through and through. Now, 5 years after Lou Donaldson disappeared, for the sake of her own closure, Karen Baja asked a local court to change his status from a missing person to deceased. Throughout this trial, you're going to hear a lot about Karen Baja. And I'm not here to tell you that Karen Baja is perfect. But one thing will be very clear. Karen Baja is not a killer. So the plaintiff has brought Karen Baja to court today with a wrongful death lawsuit. And in this country, when the plaintiff brings someone into court, they've got to prove their case. The defense has no burden. The burden lies with the plaintiff and the plaintiff alone. They have to prove every single element of wrongful death to you, the members of the jury, by a preponderance of the evidence. So what do they have to prove today? First, they have to prove that Lou Donaldson is actually dead. And second, They have to prove that Karen Baja's intentional or reckless conduct caused the death of Lou Donaldson. That burden, it's a burden the plaintiff will not be able to meet. So let's talk about the evidence you're going to hear today. But just as importantly, let's talk about the evidence you won't hear today. You're going to hear from a lot of witnesses throughout today's trial, and not a single witness will raise their right hand, take that witness stand, and be able to tell you how, when, or where Lou Donaldson died. You won't hear any evidence of an autopsy report confirming any cause or manner of Lou Donaldson's death. That's because not a single person has been able to locate Lou Donaldson dead or alive. Members of the jury, I'm going to repeat that because it's so important. Not a single person has been able to locate Lou Donaldson dead or alive. The plaintiff has filed a wrongful death case, and they don't even know where Lou Donaldson is. So let's talk about the evidence you will hear today. And you're going to hear about the police investigation into Lou Donaldson's disappearance. The investigation has been going on since 2012. It's still active today. And what you're going to learn is that the police haven't been able to find Lou Donaldson's body. The police haven't been able to find a single eyewitness who claims to have seen Miss Baja even harm her husband. And the police don't even consider Karen Baja a suspect. What will be clear by the end of this trial is that nobody, not the police, not Cam Donaldson, not Karen Baja, nobody knows where Lou Donaldson is. At the end of the day, every single thing in this case comes back to one person, and that's the plaintiff, Cam Donaldson. Cam Donaldson is the only person who has ever accused Karen Baja of murder. You're going to hear from Cam Donaldson today. And when you listen to Cam Donaldson, I want you to pay very close attention to the timeline of Cam Donaldson's accusations. Cam Donaldson did not accuse Karen Baja of murder in 2012 when Lou Donaldson went missing. From 2012 to 2017, 5 years after Lou Donaldson went missing, Cam Donaldson never once accused Karen Baja of murder. Cam Donaldson only accused Karen Baja of murder when Cam Donaldson found out that he just lost out on $10 million. This is not a case about murder. This is a case about money. That's why at the end of today's trial, my co-counsel, Ms. Bridget Fasano, is going to come before you and review everything you heard today. And she's going to ask you to find Karen Baja not liable. Thank you.
Okay. Is plaintiff ready to present its first witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff calls Cam Donaldson to the stand.
Whenever you're ready, counsel.
Yes, Your Honor. Can you please introduce yourself to the jury?
My name's Cam Donaldson.
Can you tell us why you're here today, Cam?
I'm just here to get justice for my dad and find out the truth about his death.
Can you tell us your dad's name?
My father's name was Lou Donaldson.
Can you tell us a little bit about your dad?
Sure. My dad was a pretty quirky guy. We worked together, every day. We got really close. I just really miss him.
Can you tell us what kind of things your dad liked to do?
My dad worked himself from the bottom all the way to the top. That's the kind of guy that he was. He started out selling used cars and became a millionaire. He loved flying planes. He loved big cats, tigers.
Can you explain what you mean by he loved tigers?
Well, I'm exactly as it sounds. My dad was pretty wild. He loved tigers. He opened the Wild Wildlife Sanctuary because he recognized that people were taking in these big cats as pets, and they wouldn't be able to be released back into the wild. And so he wanted to make sure that there was a place where they could be cared for.
And what, if any, kind of involvement did you have with the sanctuary?
My dad used to joke that I knew more about the business than he did. I ran the books, I wrote the checks, I answered the calls. I did it all.
Cam, you mentioned your dad disappeared.
I'll never forget it. The last day I saw my dad was August 17th, 2012. I haven't seen or heard from him since.
Who told you your dad was missing?
Karen Baja told me he was missing.
When did she tell you that?
It was just a few days later. It was the 19th.
Now, Cam, when was the last time you saw your dad?
It was the 17th, and it was normal. It was a Friday. He told me he'd see me that Monday. Nothing out of the ordinary. Asked me if I wanted to come to dinner on that Sunday. And, nothing really stuck out. It was just like a normal goodbye.
You mentioned that Karen told you your dad was missing. Who is Karen?
Karen Baja, she was married to my father when he disappeared. She's the defendant in the courtroom today.
When was the first time you saw Karen after your dad disappeared?
It was about 6 a.m. on August 19th. And the alarm went off at the sanctuary. And, I lived close by. So I drove down there and I noticed that the lock on the gate had been cut. And I saw Karen standing there holding the lockbox from my desk with some guy that I didn't know who he was. And then the police pulled in right after me.
Cam, we'll get to the events of the 19th in a second, but what was the relationship like based on what you observed between Karen and your dad?
Well, they got married a long time ago. She was actually hitchhiking on the side of the road, and my dad was nice enough to pick her up. She kind of just latched on from there. And honestly, everything seemed fine until the last couple of months.
Well, what happened in the last couple of months before your dad went missing?
They were fighting all the time, just screaming and yelling. It got pretty wild.
Can you tell us about those fights?
2 months before he went missing, there was a pretty wild fight. Again, fighting, screaming, and during the fight, Karen screamed a death threat at my dad.
And after that fight, and your dad heard that threat, what did he do?
He went to the court on June 12th and filed a temporary restraining order.
Cam, were there any other fights that you witnessed?
Yeah, there was a pretty significant fight about 2 weeks before he went missing.
Can you tell the jury about that fight?
Yeah, they were screaming back and forth about divorce. And then, after the fight, my father immediately came up to me and he was visibly shaking. I'd never seen him like that before. And he just blurted out to me that if
speculation.
Counsel response?
Your Honor, I'm not asking the witness to speculate. I'm asking him based on his observations of the event himself and his observations of that event. He was there in the office, as he has said, and he overheard the fight.
Your Honor, may I be heard?
You may.
If permitted to testify, we anticipate that Cam is going to say that his father said to him, if anything should ever happen to me, be sure to have the police look into Karen. She will be responsible. And here, Your Honor, whereas maybe that first part of the statement may fall under an exception, in that second part of the statement, she will be responsible for my death, or she will be responsible, that Lou is speculating there, and that is inadmissible, and it does not fall under any exception.
I'm going to overrule the objection.
Yes, Your Honor. Cam, can you continue telling us about what happened after that fight?
Yeah. My father came up to me, and my father was a pretty resilient guy, so it was weird to see him like that. And he came up to me and he blurted out that if anything should happen to him, that I should tell the police to look into Karen.
Now, Cam, you talked a little bit earlier about the first time you saw Karen after your dad disappeared. What did you see when you saw her?
Well, she was standing there holding the lockbox from my desk, and the lock had been cut off on the gate of the sanctuary. She was standing there with some guy, and she just kept staring at me with this smile. I'll never forget it. It felt to me deceptive, almost like she was getting away with something. It felt like she was telling me that she won. And you have to remember at this stage, I didn't even know my father was missing. And all of this stuff was going on. And as I'd mentioned earlier, the police had pulled up, and she told the police that if they had any questions, to talk to her attorneys, because she was now the owner of the sanctuary. And I was just so caught off guard by all of this. I had no idea what was going on.
Cam, you mentioned Karen was holding a lockbox. Do you know what was in that lockbox?
Yeah, it actually had my dad's will in it.
And how do you know that it had your dad's will in it?
Well, my dad made me the executor to the will. My dad's line of work was, it was dangerous. He dealt with, dangerous animals, big tigers and lions. And I had to be sure that I had access to it, in case something ever happened, and that I would be able to basically execute my duties.
Cam, you said you were the executor to that will. Do you know what that will said?
Yeah. The real will left a fourth to my mother, a fourth to Karen, a fourth to the sanctuary, and then a fourth to me.
And based on what you know, how is that will different from the will produce?
Well, again, in the real will, my father divided up everything between all of us. And in the will that Karen is bringing forth today, she's the one that receives everything.
Cam, you mentioned your dad was dead. How do you know that?
There's a few reasons, really.
Your Honor, speculation.
Counsel response.
Your Honor, if I'm allowed to ask this witness the question, he will lay a foundation as to how he has this personal knowledge. I'm not asking him to speculate to anything.
May I be heard, Your Honor?
You may.
Here, if permitted to testify, Cam will only offer circumstantial guesses of what he believes happened to his father, but he has not seen a dead body. He has not seen his father been killed. In order to know that someone is dead, these are all factors that come into play here. And Cam has no clue what happened to Lou. Therefore, if permitted to testify, Cam can only be speculating as to how he knows that his father is dead.
Overruled.
Cam, I'll ask you the question again. You mentioned your dad was dead. How do you know that?
Well, like I mentioned, me and my father were real close, and we, stayed in touch all the time. My dad just up and left. Didn't tell me anything. He didn't call me. He didn't text me. He didn't send me a letter. It's just gone. Super unlike him. And additionally, they found his glasses in the van. My dad was blind as a bat. He had the same pair of glasses since I was in high school. There's no way that he could have flown without his glasses.
Cam, are there any other reasons you think your dad is dead?
Karen also had the probate court declare my father dead.
Based on your knowledge, did Karen ever appear to grieve your dad?
Never.
Based on what you observed, did Karen ever go look for your dad?
Never.
Based on what you know, what's the first thing Karen did after she declared your father legally dead?
He went and cashed out his multi-million-dollar life insurance policy on the same afternoon.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, counsel. Any cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Donaldson, you mentioned on direct that you're the executor of your father's will, correct?
I was the executor of the original will.
Of the will that you claim was the original will, you were the executor, correct?
That's correct.
Is that your testimony today?
That's right.
Do you remember giving a deposition in this case?
Yes,
You gave an oath to be truthful?
that's correct.
You were?
Yes,
You gave an oath to be accurate and complete, correct?
that's correct.
And you were?
To the best of my ability, yes.
Sir, in that deposition, you never once mentioned that you were the executor of your father's will, correct?
I don't believe so. I believe that I did. I made it a while ago, but I thought that I did make the statement.
Well, sir, I'm sure if you did, your counsel will handle that on redirect. Now, I want to move on to a very specific quote that you mentioned on direct examination. You said that your father said to you, if anything should ever happen to him, to have the police look into Karen. True?
Yes,
And you claim that that conversation was between you and your father.
yes,
There were no other witnesses to this conversation, correct?
it was in the office, so there may have been other people around, but my father said it directly to me.
So there were no other witnesses that you brought to court today that could testify about this conversation?
That's right. I didn't bring anybody to court.
So given that Lou is not here to speak for himself, we have to take your word that this statement actually happened, correct?
That's right.
Well, let's talk about when that statement was made. Now, you claim that statement was made 2 weeks before your father disappeared.
Yes,
So that puts that in early to mid-August of 2012.
that's right.
And in 2012, when your father went missing, you never once told the police that your father said to look into Miss Baja, correct?
This was years ago. I gave multiple statements to the police. I can't recall specifically whether I gave that one or not, but you know.
Well, sir, you remember that deposition that you gave?
Yes,
You remember how you took an oath to tell the truth,
that's right.
and you did,
That's right.
and you swore to be accurate and complete in your answers, correct?
Yes,
Nowhere in that deposition do you ever mention telling the police that your father said to look into Miss Baja, correct?
no,
And you don't have any police reports or police complaints typed up that you brought to court that can prove that you told the police this?
no,
Now, sir, the investigation into your father's disappearance is still an active case, correct?
Yes.
And I want to move on to talk about your father's will now.
Okay.
Now, Ms. Baja produced a copy of your father's will, correct?
She presented one, yes.
And in that will, it left your father's entire estate to Ms. Baja, correct?
That's right.
You claim that your father had a different will.
That's right.
And you claim that in this other will, you would get 25% of all of his assets.
That's right.
You've never produced a copy of this alleged other will, correct?
That's right. I haven't seen it since Karen walked away with it.
Sir, as the executor of that will, you have no other copy that you could bring to the court?
No.
You don't have any witnesses that can testify about this other will, true?
True.
So the only person's testimony that we have to rely on today that this will ever existed is yours.
That's right.
Now, another one of your claims is that Miss Baja broke into Wild Wildlife on August 19th, 2012. Is that right?
That's right.
You claim that the police came?
Yes.
You don't have any documentation that a police complaint was filed, do you?
I don't have any report or documentation. I'm just telling you what I saw.
You have no record that the police were ever involved?
No.
No record from an alarm company to document that the alarm went off that morning?
No.
We only have your word to rely on that this break-in ever occurred, correct?
That's right.
I want to talk about how you responded to your father's disappearance. Your father disappeared in 2012.
That's right.
And you said on direct that you were incredibly close with your father, true?
Yes. I mean, we worked together for over 20 years. I mean, you can't get closer, you know?
After your dad went missing, you never tried to call him?
I mean, I was informed that my father was missing, and there was all of these, investigators and investigations going on, and it was the worst experience of my life. It's uncomparable to anything I've been through.
Well, sir, I'm simply asking, you never tried to call him, did you?
No, he was missing.
You never tried to text him?
No.
It's been 8 years since your father disappeared, isn't that right?
Yeah.
Over the past 8 years, you have not once tried to contact your father, correct?
I mean, no, he's been declared dead, and I'm not really holding out hope anymore that my father is waiting. I want justice for what happened to my father. That's why I'm here.
Well, sir, I'm not asking why you're here today. I'm just asking a simple yes or no, that over these past 8 years, you've never tried to contact your father, correct?
No.
Now, in 2017, that's when you hired a private investigator to find your father.
Yes.
That's 5 years after your father's disappearance. True?
Yes.
And in 2017, your father was also declared legally dead, right?
That's right.
And $10 million was at stake, right?
Sure.
Now, when your father was declared legally dead, Ms. Baja got that $10 million. True?
That's true.
So you did not hire a private investigator to find your father until the same year that Miss Baja inherited his estate, correct?
Yes.
Now, I want to talk about your relationship with my client. Miss Baja was your stepmom.
That's right.
You'd agree with me that you do not like my client, correct?
That's correct.
In fact, in your own words, you hate her, right?
Yeah, I believe she killed my father.
Sir, I'm not asking why. Is that a yes to my question? You hate her?
Yes.
Not only do you hate her, but you wish she were dead. True?
I mean, I may say things like that here or there, but I definitely hate Karen.
Well, sir, in your own words, you said that you hope she is attacked and eaten by one of her tigers. Isn't that right?
Yeah. Again, I I say things, but I mean, there's no denying that I'm no fan of Karen.
So that's a yes. You hope she's attacked and eaten by one of her tigers?
I mean, it's somewhat of an exaggeration, but okay. I did say it. I said it in the deposition. So
No further questions.
Any redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor.
All right. May this witness be excused.
Yes, he may.
Thank you, Mr. Donaldson. Does the plaintiff have any further witnesses to present?
Yes, Your Honor, we do. We'd like to call Taylor Pride to the stand.
All right.
May I proceed?
You may proceed whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Ms. Pride, can you go ahead and introduce yourself for us?
Yes, my name is Taylor Pride, and I'm a private investigator and forensic document examiner.
Okay, and why are you here today?
Well, I'm here because back in 2017 now, Cam Donaldson hired me to look into the disappearance of Lou and to evaluate the will that Karen Baja presented today.
Let's just start from the beginning. How did you begin your career?
So I started off in law enforcement. I was trained up in the Pioneer Police Department. I was there for 18 years. I started off as a patrol officer for 2 and then spent the next 16 as a detective. About 6 of those years I spent in the economic crimes unit, where I did a lot of time doing forensic document examination, specifically looking at forgeries.
Okay, and how did you transition from being in the police department to what you said you do now as a private investigator?
Sure. So, I love my time with the Pioneer Police Department, but after 18 years, I decided it was time to start my own firm. And so in 2016, I started my own private investigation firm where I still work today.
Now, when I first asked you to introduce yourself, you mentioned that you were something called a forensic document examiner. Mm-hmm. What exactly is that?
So as a forensic document examiner, it's my job to analyze documents to determine their authenticity. So I look to see if the document might have been forged. And I have different techniques and skills that I use to make that kind of determination.
And were you trained to do that kind of work?
Yeah, so my first training for that was, many years ago, I got into it. I did, to start off like a 2-week intensive training with AAHA, which is the national sort of expert organization on the subject of graphology. And that's kind of where I got my start, and then continued to work in this field and do continuing training.
Are you certified in any kind of way?
Yeah, I'm a board certified forensic document examiner. I got certified, I want to say it was like 16 years ago for the first time. And then I get recertified every 4 years. So there's kind of an ongoing requirement there too.
Now, have you ever come into court and testified before?
Yeah, many times.
And when you've come into court to testify, were you qualified as an expert?
Yeah, in handwriting and forensic document examination.
And any of those times, Did a judge ever not allow you to testify as an expert?
No.
Let's talk about this case specifically. Now, without telling us what they might be, were you able to come to any conclusions about this case?
I was, yeah.
Okay, and what kind of materials, evidence, exhibits, what did you use to come to those conclusions?
So I reviewed everything that was available in this case. I looked at all the evidence. I looked at the report specifically drawn up by Chris Renard, I think is her name. So I evaluated her analysis of the handwriting on the will. I looked at the will itself. I did my own investigation and acquired sample signatures and things like that.
Okay, and as you went about looking at all that evidence and reaching those conclusions, did you reliably apply the training that you've undergone in order to get to those conclusions?
Yes.
And Ms. Pride, do you think those conclusions would be useful to the jury in today's case?
I think so, yeah.
Your Honor, at this time, the plaintiff offers Ms. Pride as an expert in forensic document examination.
Any objection?
Without objection, Your Honor.
All right. Court will accept her as such.
So, Ms. Pride, one of the things you mentioned you looked at was the will that was produced by the defendant following Lou Donaldson's death. Did you have an opportunity to take a look at that?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. Well, I understand that you have an electronic notebook with all the exhibits that may come in this case. And I'd like you to orient you to what's been marked as base number 14. It should be on page 53. Can you just let me know when you're there?
Yep. All right, I'm right there with you.
Okay, is that the will you looked at in this case?
Yes, that's the same one.
Does anything about it look to have been changed, altered, modified in any way?
No, same will.
Your Honor, we offer what's been base marked as 14, the alleged will of Lou Donaldson, into evidence, as I believe would be plaintiff's 2.
Any objection?
Without objection, Your Honor.
All right. Shall be admitted.
All right. Ms. Pride, let's go ahead and take a look at that will together. Now, I want to start by asking you to look at this statement on here where it says, if I should die or disappear. Do you see that statement?
Yeah, in that second paragraph there.
Ms. Pride, how many wills have you been able to take a look at over the course of your career?
Over the course of my career?
Yes.
Hundreds. I mean, countless.
And have you ever seen this particular phrase where it says, or disappear? Have you ever seen that on a will?
Only this one.
And that signature right there from Lou Donaldson, were you able to analyze that signature?
Yeah, I took a look at that to see if it was authentic or not.
Yeah. How did you go about that?
So the process that I follow, to determine if that signature is authentic, I of course have to know what Lou's signature looks like, right? So I have to find reliable samples that have already been authenticated that I know belong to Lou. And then I take that sample and then I compare it to the signature on the will. And then I analyze the handwriting to see if there's a match or not.
Okay, you mentioned when I asked you about what materials you looked at, you mentioned a report by an investigator named Miss Renard. Did you take a look at her signature comparison report?
I did, yeah.
Okay, I want to orient you in that electronic packet to what's been base numbered 7. It should be on page 40. Let me know when you're there.
All right, I am there.
Is that the report you looked at?
Yeah, this is the same one.
And specifically, the bottom 2 signatures in that chart, are those the ones you used in your analysis?
Yeah, the driver's license and the one from this will here, yeah.
Does anything about them look to have been changed, altered, modified?
Nope, same signatures.
Your Honor, at this time, we would offer the signature comparison chart from Chris Renard that's been base numbered 7 into evidence as plaintiff's 3.
Any objection?
Without objection, Your Honor.
All right. Shall be admitted.
So, Ms. Pride, let's take a look at those 2 signatures you mentioned that you used. So just walk us through, when you first start to compare these signatures, what are you looking at?
I look at a lot of different things. Some of these things are more obvious than others. I look at the slant of the lettering, the weight, the styles of the lettering. One thing I noticed here that was really strange was that on his original authentic signature from the driver's license, Lou hardly ever picks up his pen. And with a trained eye, you can kind of just tell that it's pretty smooth, and he leaves his pen on the surface while he's writing. But something that I picked up, pun intended, is in the signature from the will. Whoever signed that, they picked up the pen multiple times, and that's not something that that really varies from time to time when a person is writing their signature. You usually either pick it up a lot or you don't, and Lou didn't.
Now, what about the individual letters that we see here? Did those factor into your conclusions?
Yeah. So you can tell that some of the letters are just written differently. The one from the driver's license, if you take a look at the capital L in Lou, look at that loop, the top loop, the small one. I mean, there's hardly a loop there. It looks almost just like a line. In the signature from the will, that loop is much more pronounced, like someone took care in drawing that out. And there were a few letters that were kind of strange like that.
What was another letter that you noticed that you found strange?
So right next door, the lowercase o in Lou, top one, you'll notice it has just one little curl. Bottom one, it's very odd. It's like a double loop inside of the O. That's not something you see very often, and it doesn't match to Lou's authentic signature.
Okay, and were there any other letters?
Yes, in fact, it was another O. If you take a look at Donaldson, the second O, the one from the driver's license, it's not really pronounced. There's no circle there. It's kind of just like a line, a cheat. And we call that kind of a ghost letter or a lazy letter. A lot of times when people are writing their signature, you sort of trail off at the end and gets like lazy and you don't write out the letters properly. But as you can see on the signature from the will here, the O is very carefully drawn out. It's a full round circle with a double loop. It doesn't match Lou's original authentic signature.
Okay. And you mentioned that some of the factors you look at were the quality of the lines, the slant, the quivering nature.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see any evidence of that factored in for you?
Yeah, if you look at Lou's driver's license signature, it's very smooth and uniform, the weight of the lettering. But if you look at the letters on the signature from the will, you can see there are points where there are ink spots, like in the capital D of Donaldson. It's like the pen was held there for a longer time. It's lighter and darker and lighter and darker. And throughout the whole signature on the will, there are these quivering lines. It's kind of shaky instead of smooth.
Where do you see those quivering lines at?
I mean, there's a lot of it throughout the signature, but particularly that capital D is really bad. It's pretty amorphous. It doesn't hold that same smooth form as the capital D on the driver's license signature. And then also the lowercase L and the lowercase d from Donaldson, you can see all of the shakes in the lettering, as if somebody was writing slowly. Oftentimes when you're writing slowly and looking at a sample, trying to sort of mimic a signature, that can happen.
So taking this all into combination, the picking up and putting down of the pen, the shaky lines, the differences between the letters that you noted, were you able to come to a conclusion about the signature that's on the will the defendant produced?
Yes, I was.
What was that conclusion?
That wasn't Lou's signature.
Ms. Fried, when I asked you why you were here today, you said you also looked into his disappearance. What kind of things did you look into in order to assess Lou's disappearance?
Well, there was this theory, because, he's like this amateur pilot, right? He likes to fly. And so there was this theory that he flew off somewhere, specifically Costa Rica. So I investigated that. I tried to see, what, if any, planes he owned that he might have taken. And I investigated whether it was likely he could have ended up in Costa Rica or not.
Well, let's explore that theory some. Were you able to look at his bank records as a part of that?
Yeah, I did. I wanted to see if he had been spending money, because if he was spending money in Costa Rica, then maybe that could point us in the right direction. But that wasn't the case.
Well, I want you to take a look in that electronic notebook at Bates number 15. It should be on page 54. Just let me know when you're there.
Yep, I'm there.
Are these the bank records from Lou Donaldson that you looked at?
Yes.
Do they look to be in the same state as when you first saw them?
They do, yeah.
Your Honor, at this time, we offer what's been Bates numbered as 15, the bank record of Lou Donaldson, into evidence as plaintiff's 4.
Any objection?
Without objection, Your Honor.
Okay, shall be admitted.
So let's take a look at these bank records together. So at the time of Lou's disappearance, how much money was left in his bank account?
Just shy of $100,000.
Do you have any evidence of any transactions that are occurring after the day he disappeared?
None, not in any of the 5 years after he disappeared.
What about any large cash withdrawals? Were there any really big cash withdrawals you saw in the days leading up to his disappearance?
No, just some ordinary transactions, nothing big.
Ms. Pride, you talked about how he was an amateur pilot. Did you look into whether or not he owned any planes at the time of his disappearance?
I did, yeah. I searched to see if he owned any planes.
Were you able to find any?
I found one. I did find one, and I went and visited the hangar where it was located. I took pictures of it.
Okay, if you could take a look in that notebook, the Bates number 1 on page 20.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the picture of Lou Donaldson's plane that you took?
Yep, that's the one.
Your Honor, we now offer what's been Bates numbered 1, the picture of Lou Donaldson's plane, into evidence as plaintiff's 5.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
All right, shall be admitted.
So, Ms. Pride, is this the picture of Lou Donaldson's plane that you took?
Yep, that's the one I went and checked out.
Were there any other planes that you found that Lou Donaldson owned at the time of his disappearance?
Nope, only this one being stored in the hangar.
And where did you find this one when you took the picture?
It was in a hangar, I think maybe like 40 miles.
Objection, Your Honor. May I be heard?
You may.
Your Honor, pursuant to Rule 403, this document is misleading the jury. May I be heard?
You may.
This photograph of the plane that counsel just mentioned is Lou Donaldson's actual plane, is not actually certified as Lou Donaldson's actual plane. This photograph is a copy of a plane similar to the model Lou Donaldson has. It is not, in fact, Lou Donaldson's plane, and any such mention of it as being Lou Donaldson's actual plane is misleading the jury.
Counsel response?
Your Honor, that's not our understanding of the evidence, but if we want to label it as such, it's just a technicality, and that's fine with the plaintiff. The key here is that Lou Donaldson's plane, the only one we know about, it was on the ground years after his disappearance, not at the bottom of the ocean or in a debris pile in a crash somewhere.
Okay.
Your Honor, may I respond briefly?
Sure.
No objection to the document itself, just we object to the jury identifying this as Lou Donaldson's actual plane. It is not, in fact, his actual plane.
All right. Well, I'll just caution all counsel to avoid testifying themselves and allow the witnesses to actually lay the foundation for any exhibits that are admitted.
Yes, Your Honor.
So, Ms. Pride, we'll call this a picture of a plane similar to the one that you found from Lou Donaldson. Did you find any other planes that Lou Donaldson owned?
I looked, and this is the only one I could find.
Now, the plane that you found that was identical to the one in this picture, where did you find it?
I found it being stored at a hangar, and this was, between July and August of 2017. So it was 5 years after he disappeared.
Did you ever look into these allegations that he may have flown off somewhere like Costa Rica?
I did, yeah. Followed up with that.
How'd you follow up?
Well, I sent one of my employees down to Costa Rica to poke around, and we couldn't find any sign that he had been there.
The last thing I'd like to ask you about is the relationship between the defendant and Lou Donaldson. Did you look into that at all?
I did.
What did you find?
Well, I found that Mr. Donaldson had filed for a temporary restraining order against Ms. Basha back in June, a couple months before he disappeared.
Let's take a look at that. Your Honor, I'm going to display what was entered before trial as plaintiffs 1, the redacted copy of the request for a restraining order. Ms. Basha, when you saw this restraining order, what was it that stuck out to you?
Well, it was clear that this wasn't a very happy couple. They appeared to be seeking a divorce. Mr. Donaldson didn't feel safe around Karen anymore. And he apparently felt so unsafe that he was trying to get a legal restraining order against her so that she would stay away.
And what's that date down there at the bottom where it was filed, this restraining order request?
Oh, yeah, it was, so he filed for it on June 12th of 2012.
Ms. Pride, that will that you concluded was a forgery.
Mm-hmm.
What was the date on that will?
That will came 2 days later. It was on June 14th.
And 2 days after Lou Donaldson requested a restraining order against this defendant,
mm-hmm.
What did this will provide happen to his estate?
It gave the entire estate to Karen.
And how much was that estate worth?
Not including the life insurance policy, the estate was $5 million.
Your Honor, we have no more questions for the witness at this time.
All right, any cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
You may.
Good afternoon, Ms. Renard.
Afternoon.
I want to start off by talking to you about the handwriting analysis you conducted in this case, okay?
Okay.
You're a handwriting expert, right?
Yes, I am.
In this case, you were trying to determine if the signature on Lou Donaldson's last will and testament was forged.
That's correct.
In order to do that, you actually had to compare the signature on the will with other known samples of Lou Donaldson's signature.
That's right.
Mr. Donaldson's signature on the restraining order was one of the signatures you used?
Yes, I did look at that.
Mr. Donaldson's signature on his driver's license?
Yes, that was also in Chris Renard's report.
Mr. Donaldson's signature on a note he wrote to Cam Donaldson, right?
Yeah, I think there was like a note from a few years back. I looked at that too.
We can agree that in order to compare signatures, you actually have to look at them, right?
Yes.
Ms. Pride, you did not bring a copy of the note Lou Donaldson wrote to Cam Donaldson to court today.
I didn't think it was really necessary, no.
Ma'am, I'm not asking you if you thought it was necessary. I'm just asking you whether you brought it to court today, and you didn't, right?
No, I don't have it on me, no.
So this jury will never be able to see what Lou Donaldson's signature looked like on that note.
Objection, Your Honor. Speculation. May I explain?
You may.
Your Honor, counsel is asking this witness to testify as to what evidence is going to come out later in trial, and she has no idea what other witnesses may provide as evidence or testify about in the remainder of this case. She can just talk about what she knows personally.
Your Honor, may I make an offer of proof?
You may.
The defense will not be bringing Cam Donaldson's note that he got from Lou Donaldson to court today. There will be no evidence presented of this note. This expert relied on it in coming to their conclusion and chose not to bring it to court. The jury should know that they won't be able to compare that signature.
All right, I'm going to overrule the objection.
Ma'am, I'll ask it again. This jury will never be able to see what Lou Donaldson's signature looked like on that note.
I guess not.
This jury will never be able to compare the signature on the note to the signature on the will?
I guess they won't. No, but they have other signatures to look at.
Now, as a handwriting expert, you could have compared Miss Baja's handwriting to Lou Donaldson's signature on the will, right?
Sure, but that wasn't my job. It was my job to figure out whether the will is forged, not who forged it.
Ma'am, I'm not asking you about what your job was. I'm asking you about what you did. And you could have looked at Karen Baja's signature and compared it to the signature on the will, right?
If that's what I had been asked to do, yes, I could have done that.
You could have done that comparison to determine whether or not Miss Baja forged that will.
If that was what I was hired to do, yes, I could have done that.
But you didn't do that comparison.
I wasn't asked to, no.
And ma'am, because the plaintiff didn't ask you to analyze Miss Baja's signature, you have no opinion on whether she forged that will.
I don't have an opinion as to whether it was her handwriting, but it does appear that she would have a very strong motive to forge that will.
Ma'am, I'm not asking you about motives. I'm asking you about the handwriting. And because you never did that analysis, you have no opinion as to whether Miss Baja forged that will.
No, not based on handwriting, no.
Ma'am, I want to go over some things you talked about on direct examination. You talked a lot about Costa Rica and planes, so I want to get into that with you. You mentioned that you looked into whether Lou Donaldson is in Costa Rica, right?
I did.
So I just want to make this very clear for the members of the jury. You yourself have never been to Costa Rica to look for Lou Donaldson, right?
No, I have an investigation firm, so sometimes I delegate some of my duties, yeah.
That's right. You delegated that duty to somebody else in your firm, right?
Yes.
So you say that they went to Costa Rica to look for Lou Donaldson, right?
Yes, and they reported back to me.
Ma'am, you don't have a written report from that agent of your company into their investigation in Costa Rica, do you?
Yeah, I don't have anything to show you today, no.
That's right. That person who you claim went to Costa Rica is not here to testify in court today, right?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Ma'am, so let's talk about those planes. You relied on Cam Donaldson's statements when coming to your conclusion, right?
I looked at Cam Donaldson's statements, yeah.
That's right. They were factored into your investigation, right?
Sure.
Ma'am, Cam Donaldson himself states that his father has multiple planes, right?
I think Cam said something like his dad would like buy and sell planes a lot. I don't know that Cam really knows exactly the number of planes that Lou owned at the time of his death. I don't think Cam said anything about that.
That's right, ma'am. But Cam Donaldson has said that he doesn't even know how many planes Lou Donaldson has.
That's right. That's why I was investigating it.
So I want to talk to you about your interviews with Cam Donaldson. Cam Donaldson was part of your investigation, as you said, right?
Yes.
Ma'am, but you know that Cam Donaldson can't be trusted. Isn't that a fact?
Objection, Your Honor. Argumentative as well as speculation.
I'll withdraw, Your Honor. I can move on.
All right.
So, Miss Pride, let's talk about Cam Donaldson's credibility. Cam Donaldson told you that Karen Baja broke into a lockbox and stole a will, right?
The lockbox that Karen took from Cam's own desk, yes.
That's right. In fact, Cam Donaldson claims that the police were present for this incident.
I think that the police were present after the lockbox was taken. But yeah, yes.
So there was police presence involved, according to Cam Donaldson?
That's my understanding of what Cam reported.
You weren't able to find any police reports about this incident, were you?
I don't have any, no.
None of the local police told you this happened?
No.
You couldn't find a single eyewitness who claims to have seen this incident?
No.
You can't even show this jury a picture of the alleged lockbox.
I don't have a picture of the lockbox, no.
The only person who says this happened is Cam Donaldson and Cam Donaldson alone.
From what I've heard today, yes.
It's fair to say that you trust what Cam Donaldson tells you, right?
I suppose so, yes.
That makes sense. Well, because Cam Donaldson hired you, right?
Yes, Cam hired me.
In fact, Cam Donaldson also accused Karen Baja of destroying Lou Donaldson's original will and testament, right?
Yeah, the one that was in the lockbox that she stole from his desk. Yeah.
So, ma'am, I'm getting that right. Cam Donaldson accused Karen Baja of destroying that will?
I mean, it's not here today. She did something with it, so.
Ma'am, I'm not asking you to speculate as to what happened with it. I'm asking about what Cam told you. And Cam Donaldson told you that Karen Baja destroyed that will, right?
I don't remember for sure, but that's quite possible. Yeah.
You've been on this case since 2017, haven't you?
Yes.
So in your 3-year investigation, you haven't been able to find a single copy of this alleged original will.
That's right.
You couldn't find a single person outside of Cam Donaldson who ever even saw this document.
I mean, sometimes not that many people see a will.
Ma'am, I'm not asking you about who may have seen a will. I'm asking you about the facts in this case. And you could not find a single person other than Cam Donaldson who ever saw this document.
That's right.
Cam Donaldson hired you to find Lou Donaldson, right?
To investigate his disappearance, yeah. See what
That's
happened.
right. Lou Donaldson disappeared in August of 2012, right?
Yes, I think August 17th.
Cam Donaldson did not hire you in 2012.
Right. I mean, the police were investigating it back then. But after 5 years of not getting any answers or resolution, I think Cam was just fed up. I mean,
that's right, ma'am.
Figure it out.
Cam Donaldson hired you in 2017, right?
Yes.
In 2017, Karen Baja received the entirety of Lou Donaldson's estate, right?
Yes, after she had him declared dead.
In 2017, Cam Donaldson received 0 of Lou Donaldson's estate.
That's right.
So let me get this straight for the members of the jury. Cam Donaldson did not hire you to find his missing father until the year that Cam received 0 of his father's estate.
Objection, Your Honor. Asked and answered.
Your Honor, that question has not been asked.
Overruled.
Ma'am, I'll ask it again. Cam Donaldson did not hire you to find his missing father until the year that Cam Donaldson received 0 of his father's estate.
It was the same year, but he actually hired me 5 or 6 weeks, I think, before Karen had Lou declared dead. So he hired me before the estate was actually distributed in any way.
Ma'am, I'm not asking you about when you were hired that year. I'm asking you about the year itself. And the truth is, Cam Donaldson did not hire you to find his missing father until the year that Cam received 0 of his father's estate.
Sure, it was the same year.
So, ma'am, you also think that Lou Donaldson is dead, don't you?
Yeah, I believe that he's gone.
So I want to talk to you about that notion. You looked into the evidence surrounding Lou Donaldson's disappearance, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You weren't able to find Lou Donaldson alive, were you?
No, I sure wasn't.
You weren't able to find Lou Donaldson dead either.
I didn't find a body. No one else has either.
That's right. No one else has ever found Lou Donaldson's body.
Right, to my knowledge.
No autopsy has been conducted in this case?
There's no body, so no.
Ma'am, you'd agree with me that investigators often want to know how someone died in a murder investigation, right?
Yes.
If Mr. Donaldson is dead, you have no idea how he died.
No, I don't.
You'd surely agree with me that a murder weapon is a key piece of evidence in any murder investigation.
Yes, if there was a murder weapon, that's going to be very important.
You didn't find a murder weapon in this case, did you?
Not 5 years after he went missing and 5 years after the police were already investigating, no.
Ma'am, but you also looked into the police investigation too, right?
As far as I could, but it's still ongoing, so it's not like they were going to really share much with me.
Ma'am, the police did not recover any kind of murder weapon in this case.
Not to my knowledge, but I don't work for the police department anymore.
Knowing the location of where somebody died, you'd agree with me that's also very important to a murder investigation.
Yes, and I was investigating where he might have died or disappeared. That was a large part of the investigation.
So if Mr. Donaldson is dead, you don't know where he died.
I don't know where he died.
Knowing when somebody died, that's also a very important aspect of any murder investigation, right?
I didn't investigate a murder, but yes, that can be if you're in a criminal court, sure.
If Mr. Donaldson is dead, you have no idea when he died.
Not precisely, no, I don't.
Neither you or the police found any eyewitnesses who claim to have seen Lou Donaldson being killed.
Again, I don't know what the police found or didn't find. Their investigation is still ongoing. I can only tell you what I found.
All right, let's talk about what you found. And you found no eyewitnesses who claim to have seen Lou Donaldson being killed.
No, I did not find any.
You'd agree with me that as a private investigator, investigators often look for evidence of a physical struggle when they're investigating a murder, right?
Yeah, when they're investigating a murder around the time the murder happened, that wasn't really the case here.
Ma'am, so let's talk about this case. In this case, you found no evidence of any scratches on Karen Baja.
5 years after the fact, no.
That's right. Even in 2012, you weren't able to find any evidence suggesting any scratches sustained by Miss Baja.
No.
No evidence of any bruises sustained by Miss Baja.
No.
Ma'am, throughout the entirety of your investigation, you haven't been able to find any evidence of a single injury sustained by Karen Baja.
Not one that lasted 5 years, no.
Ma'am, the police have been investigating this since 2012, haven't they?
That's my understanding, yes.
The case is still active today.
Yes, it is, to my understanding.
They've been investigating this case for over 8 years, right?
Yes.
And you know that to this day, the police don't even consider Karen Baja a suspect.
From what I understand, that's correct.
Thank you, Ms. Pride. I have no further questions.
Thank you, counsel. Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Pride, if the police did have incriminating evidence against this defendant, would you know about it?
I don't work for the police department. They don't give access to the public when they have an ongoing investigation. They're just not going to share the information they're gathering. But yeah, I wouldn't have access to that.
Now, opposing counsel asked you about whether or not Ms. Baja was named as a suspect. And I just want to make sure I understand correctly. Have the police actually closed this investigation?
No, it's still ongoing.
And he asked you about what happened with Lou Donaldson's estate. So what was it that gave this defendant that $5 million estate?
So after Cam hired me in July of 2017, it was like 5 weeks later that Karen had the probate court declare Lou legally dead, which was a prerequisite. It was a requirement for her to collect on the estate. So she did that after she had him declared dead.
Right. And what document was it that gave Lou Donaldson's estate to her?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it was the
Objection,
last.
Your Honor, this question was asked and answered multiple times on direct examination.
What was the question, counsel?
What document gave? Oh, not me. My apologies.
Yes, Your Honor. I asked her what document it was that gave Ms. Baja the $5 million estate. This goes to clarify the line of questioning from counsel about how that estate got transferred from Lou Donaldson to the defendant.
Overruled.
So what document was it that transferred that $5 million from Lou Donaldson's estate to the defendant?
It's the will that Karen presented to the courts that we're talking about here today.
What conclusion did you draw about that will?
That was a forged will.
Your Honor, we have no more questions for this witness. We just asked for her to be excused.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Pride. Does the plaintiff have any further witnesses to present?
Your Honor, we don't have any further witnesses to present to the court, but we would like to offer testimony by way of video from a man whose legal name is Exotic Bob. I believe we discussed this briefly before trial.
Yes, Your Honor. I would like to re-raise my objection as this is inadmissible hearsay under 804B.
I'm going to overrule the objection and allow the testimony to be presented.
Yes, Your Honor.
Your Honor, excuse me.
May it be heard on the issue, Your Honor?
You may.
Opposing counsel is going to present this statement that we looked at earlier, in which Exotic Bob claims that Miss Baja threatened to feed him to the tigers. They are trying to use any testimony from Exotic Bob that he was in illegal business with Miss Baja as a conduit in order to get in the truth of the matter that Miss Baja may have said this statement to him. They are passing this off as a true statement. This statement about Miss Baja, that is not against the interest of Exotic Bob. That is against the interest of my client, and that is impermissible under 804B.
Counsel, you want to have a brief response?
Yes, Your Honor. We're absolutely using this for the truth because it's accepted from hearsay. We can use it for that purpose. Additionally, Your Honor, this argument, it just goes to the weight of the evidence, not its admissibility. Certainly, it's damaging against the defendant's client, but under the rules of evidence, it is admissible pursuant to your ruling.
May I be heard, Your Honor?
Very briefly.
Yes, Your Honor. In order to fall under the exception under 804B, it has to be against the interest of the speaker. Again, opposing counsel just stated that it is against the interest of our client. That is not the speaker. The speaker is Exotic Bob. Therefore, this is impermissible under 804B, and we ask that it be excluded, or any mention of Miss Baja or a threat that she made to Exotic Bob be excluded.
All right. I think I understand the arguments, and I think everyone's made a good record of their objection and the response to that objection. I am still going to overrule the objection and allow that evidence to come in.
Yes, Your Honor.
Your Honor, may we share the video on screen and play it for the jury?
You may.
Thank you.
And at the end of that meeting, Karen Baja walked out of my office. She stopped suddenly, turned around, and she came marching back to my desk, and she leaned over and she looked me right in the eye and she said, "Exotic Bob," that's me, Exotic Bob. She said, "Exotic Bob, I swear if you double-cross me on this deal, I will do to you exactly as I did to my husband." She said, "There won't be no disappearance, no mythical flight to Costa Rica." She goes, "Your last supper will be you. I'll feed you to my kiddies just like I did him." And then she turned around and she walked out of my office. That's all I've got to say about that.
And Your Honor, before we conclude our case in chief, we'd just like to confirm with you the pieces of evidence that have been entered so that we're all on the same page.
All right.
We should have 5 pieces. In order, they should be Bates numbered 16, 14, 7, 15, and 1.
All right.
Is that what the court has as well?
Yes, it is what the court has, Ms. Fasano. Is that your understanding as well?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Looks like we're all on the same page then.
Perfect. The plaintiff rests its case in chief, Your Honor.
Okay. Any matters we need? Well, let me ask you guys, would you like to take a brief recess before we start the defense's case in chief?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Why don't we take, it was 5 minutes sufficient, or you'd rather have 10?
5 is perfect for the plaintiff, but we're fine with more if defense would like that.
5 is fine, Your Honor.
All right, we'll recess for 5 minutes. We'll come back at 5 till 6 Mountain Standard Time.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Sorry, it's Mountain Daylight Time. I think I messed that up. All right, looks like council is all back and ready to go. Are all the witnesses that are necessary for the remainder also present?
Defense is ready, Your Honor.
Your Honor,
Okay.
it appears plaintiff is ready as well.
All right, terrific. Any matters we need to take up before heading into the defense's case in chief?
No motions at this time, Your Honor.
Okay.
Your Honor,
Yes, sir.
before we begin, can we get a time check from the timekeepers in trial?
You sure can. Who's our timekeeper?
Your Honor, I and Taylor Pride have been keeping time. I wanted a point of clarification. Does each side receive 70 minutes or 75 minutes?
70 minutes is my understanding. Is that everyone else's understanding?
That's the plaintiff's understanding as well.
That's my understanding too. And with that, I have defenses using 34 minutes and 16 seconds at halftime, and plaintiff has used 40 minutes and 12 seconds. And give me 1 second to get the remaining. That leaves 29 minutes and 48 seconds for plaintiff, 30 minutes and 44 seconds for defense at halftime.
Okay, that all sound about right to everybody?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Well, let's have defense's first witness.
The defense calls Karen Baja to the stand.
Good evening, Ms. Baja.
Good evening.
Counsel, whenever you're ready.
Yes, Your Honor. Good evening, Ms. Baja. Would you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Yes, my name is Karen Baja.
Where do you work, Ms. Baja?
I work at and I own Wild Wildlife.
What is Wild Wildlife?
Wild Wildlife is my pride and joy. It's an animal sanctuary dedicated to protecting and preserving tigers, lions, and other big cats. It's really my life's work. I've become so passionate about caring for these animals.
Would you recognize a picture of Wild Wildlife?
Absolutely, yes.
Would you turn to the document Bates stamped 18 and let me know when you're there? And for the record, I'll mark this as Defense Exhibit A.
I am there.
What is Defense Exhibit A?
It is a picture of some tigers sleeping at Wild Wildlife.
And is it a fair and accurate representation of some of the tigers at Wild Wildlife?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, I offer Defense Exhibit A into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
All right, shall be admitted.
Permission to publish Defense Exhibit A?
You may.
Ms. Baja, tell us what we're looking at.
Sure. This shows what Wild Wildlife looks like. This is two of our favorite tigers taking a nap.
Mr. Nanavati, we can bring that picture down now. Are you married, Karen?
Yes, I am. I'm married to Lou Donaldson.
How did you two meet?
It's a funny story, actually. I was hitchhiking one night along the side of the road all alone when along came Lou and he rescued me.
Were you and Lou both involved in Wild Wildlife?
Yes, we ran it together. And I guess you could say as our love grew, as our marriage grew throughout the years, so did the business.
Do you love your husband?
Absolutely. He's my soulmate.
Was your marriage perfect?
No, no marriage is perfect. And I'll admit we hit some bumps in the road along the way. But like I said, at the end of the day, he is the love of my life.
Do you know where Lou is today?
No, I so wish I did, but I don't.
Well, when was the last time that you saw your husband?
It was 8 years ago, August of 2012.
How did you handle your husband's disappearance?
How can you handle something like that? I prayed and I hoped every day that he would return home to me. But each day was harder than the last. I just tried to keep going.
Have you had any closure?
Yes and no. After 5 painful years, it became clear what the stark reality was. My Lou was never coming home to me. So I did go down to the courthouse, and there was a legal finding that he was declared dead.
So, Ms. Baja, what happened to Wild Wildlife when Lou disappeared?
Well, I continued to run it on my own.
How were you able to afford that by yourself?
Lou did leave me some money so that I could continue on with our life's work.
Now, Ms. Baja, I want to talk about August 18, 2012, the day that your husband went missing. What happened that night?
Sure, I was at home taking care of some newborn tiger cubs that were born just a few days prior. And in the middle of the night, I realized that I needed milk and formula, so I ran out to go get that.
Did Lou go with you?
No, he did not.
Why not?
I don't know. I didn't really know where he was at the time, and the tiger cubs just really needed to eat, so I rushed out.
Is it unusual for you to not know where your husband is?
No, that unfortunately is not unusual.
Well, why is that?
Lou's a businessman, and he would often have to leave at a moment's notice.
Do you know why you would have to leave on such short notice?
No, not really. My husband was a bit of a secretive man. He would take his planes all over the world, sometimes to Costa Rica, fly by himself, and he'd often take fishing trips by himself too.
Would you recognize a picture of your husband fishing?
Absolutely, yes.
Would you turn to the document Bates stamped 10 and let me know when you're there? And for the record, I'll mark this as Defense Exhibit B.
I am there.
What is this attachment, Ms. Baja?
It's a picture of my Lou fishing.
And is it a fair and accurate representation of this picture of Lou?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, I offer Defense Exhibit B into evidence.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor, relevance.
Counsel, response to relevance?
Your Honor, as you are aware, the bar for relevance is extremely low. And here, this picture was brought by Karen to show how much she loved her husband. The defense is making an argument that she murdered her husband and that their relationship was extremely toxic. However, Karen brought this picture and she wants to talk about it to show about her knowledge of their marriage and how their relationship really truly was. And therefore, it is relevant to this proceeding.
Yeah, and I think it'll help the jury understand what he looked like and give a clearer picture of what we're talking about here. So I'm going to overrule the objection.
Yes, Your Honor.
Your Honor, I offer Defense Exhibit B into evidence.
Which shall be admitted.
Permission to publish?
You may.
Now, in a moment, you'll see that picture that we're talking about. Can you tell us about this picture, Ms. Baja?
Yes, this is my favorite picture of Lou. I think it really embodies his spirit and paints him how he really was.
What do you mean how he really was?
Well, Lou, like I said, was a bit of a secretive guy, kind of a loner, really.
Well, let's step back to August 18, 2012. And Mr. Nanavati, we can take that picture down now. Thank you. Now, on August 18th, 2012, on your trip to get the formula, did you run into any issues that night?
Yes, on my drive home about 3 a.m., my car broke down.
Did you call anyone for help?
I did, yes. I called my brother, who is the deputy sheriff, but I didn't bring my phone with me that night. So I flagged down a car and they let me borrow their phone to call my brother.
Well, why did you call your brother?
Well, like I said, he's the deputy sheriff, so I knew that he was awake and on duty that night. I just knew that it would be no problem for him to give me a lift.
Ms. Baja, I want to talk about some of the allegations that were made against you today. Cam Donaldson claims that you killed Lou. So I have to ask, Ms. Baja, did you kill your husband?
No, I did not.
Cam also testified about your marriage. Is it true that you and Lou considered a divorce?
Yes, that is true.
Why?
In large part because Lou had another woman in Costa Rica.
Well, did Lou ever file for that divorce?
No, we were trying to work through our issues. We had been together for far too long to just throw everything away.
So when Lou went missing, did you tell the police about this woman in Costa Rica?
Yes, I told them about Costa Rica. I told them about the other woman in hopes that they would potentially find him.
Now, another allegation Cam made is that you threatened Lou. So I have to ask, have you ever threatened your husband?
No, never.
Have you ever harmed your husband?
Never. No.
Well, what about Exotic Bob's claim that you made threats to make him disappear like your husband, as he says?
Exotic Bob absolutely hates me. He blames me for why he's in jail. He made that up. He fabricated it just to get back at me.
Now, another one of Cam's allegations today is that you forged Lou's will. Did you forge the will, Miss Baja?
No.
Now, back when you first met Lou, how did his family treat you?
Poorly, to put it lightly. I don't think they were ever too accepting of the fact that Lou loved me.
How did Cam treat you?
Like the rest of the family, poorly.
Can you describe how Cam treated you poorly?
Sure. After Lou went missing, Cam started to create these vicious rumors and conspiracies about me that are wholly untrue.
Do you know how much money Cam is seeking in this lawsuit today?
Yes, Cam is seeking every penny of the $10 million.
No further questions at this time.
Any cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Now, Ms. Baja, I want to make something clear. You're the one who petitioned the court to have your husband declared legally dead, correct?
Yes.
And you did that because, in your words, he was never coming home.
After 5 painful years, it did become clear that that was the stark reality. Yes.
And you petitioned the court because you were sure of it.
No, honestly, it just became clear that that's what the reality was. It was 5 years, 5 long years.
Ms. Baja, I want to move on and talk about the relationship you had with Lou. He was your husband, correct?
Yes.
You met him when you were pretty young, right?
Yes.
You were desperate for a ride and hitchhiking on the side of the road, weren't you?
Yes.
You didn't have a whole lot, did you?
No, I never had much.
But when Lou saw you hitchhiking, well, he was kind enough to pick you up, wasn't he?
Yes.
And for you, it was love at first sight.
Yes.
But Lou was a little bit older than you, wasn't he?
Yes.
By about 20 years?
Yes.
So Lou kind of had his life together when you met him, didn't he?
Yes.
You liked the security and the stability that he could provide you.
Yes.
And that security and stability, well, he gave you a nice life, didn't he?
Yes, we worked at Wild Wildlife together. It was a nice life with the two of us.
I'm sorry, Ms. Baja, you cut out there for a second. I'll let you repeat that answer.
Yeah, we had a very nice life together.
And that life, well, you even said he gave you an animal sanctuary. The life in that sanctuary, they were important to you, weren't they?
Yes.
And for a really long time, your marriage with Lou was great.
Yes.
But by 2012, you guys had hit a rough spot, hadn't you?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Things had gotten so rough that Lou even petitioned for a restraining order against you.
Yes.
Things had gotten so bad that Lou even told you he wanted a divorce.
We discussed it.
You mentioned you think Lou wanted a divorce because you think he had a mistress.
Yes.
But to be clear, Miss Baja, when you met Lou, well, he was married.
Yes.
In fact, he left his first wife to be with you.
Yes.
And so you were worried that he might leave you to be with a new mistress.
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance.
Counsel, response?
Yes, Your Honor. I'm asking the witness to testify as to why she was might have been concerned that Lou would leave her for this mistress. It's relevant to today's case because we're trying to prove that the defendant herself is the reason why Lou is no longer with us, and that goes to motive.
Overruled.
Ms. Baja, I'll ask that again. You were worried that Lou might leave you to be with his new mistress.
We were working through our issues and we were talking it through. I wasn't worried that he would leave me for her, even though he probably did in the end.
Now, Ms. Baja, I want to talk about the early morning hours of August 18th. You testified on direct examination that you were down at the sanctuary nursing some tiger cubs, correct?
Yes.
But you ran out of formula.
Yes.
So you had to go to the store to get some more supplies.
Yes.
So you got in your car and you head down to the store, but your car broke down on the way back, didn't it?
Yes.
And that was at about 3 in the morning.
Yes.
And you didn't have your phone with you.
I did not.
So you said you had to stop on the side of the road to help you.
Yes.
Now, Ms. Baja, you can't tell us the name of that person, can you?
I cannot. It was super quick in passing.
You can't tell us what they looked like.
No, I don't really remember. It was a long time ago. It was like, what's that, 8 years ago?
Ms. Baja, you can't even tell us what color car they were driving.
No, it was 3 a.m. and dark.
Now, Ms. Baja, all you can tell us is that someone stopped on the side of the road so you could use their phone to call for help.
Yes.
You didn't call your husband.
No, I called my brother.
You called your brother and he took you back to the sanctuary that night, correct?
Yes.
But you didn't call your husband because you didn't know if he was at home.
Yes.
And it was the next morning when you woke up on the 18th that you discovered Lou was missing.
No, actually, he would take business trips and be gone for days at a time. I had no idea that he was missing at this point.
But you would agree that August 18th is when Lou was declared missing.
Yeah, someone reported him missing.
Now, Ms. Baja, you and Lou were married for a long time, like you said, correct?
Yes.
And you even mentioned on your direct examination that it was common for Lou to just take trips.
Yes.
He'd be gone and you'd have no idea where he was.
Yes.
That was pretty common throughout your marriage.
Yeah, it wasn't unusual.
Any of those times that Lou took off and you didn't know where he was, did you ever report him missing?
I did not.
Did you ever try to call him?
No.
In this case, did you ever try to call Lou after he was missing?
No.
In this case, did you ever try to call Cam to see if he knew where he was?
No.
And in any of those past times in the last 10 years, you said you didn't report him missing, correct?
I did not.
But this time, after Lou had only been gone for a short period, you reported him missing.
Lou?
Yes.
I'm not the one who reported my husband missing.
Ms. Baja, you testified on direct that you talked to the police and told them to look into Costa Rica, correct?
Yes.
Now, Ms. Baja, I want to move on and talk about the next day. You went down to the sanctuary because you didn't trust Lou. Or you didn't trust Cam, I'm sorry.
Yes.
And on August 19th, or on August 20th, I'm sorry, you fired Cam from the sanctuary.
That's not the case. I did not fire Cam.
But you would agree that Cam no longer works at the sanctuary.
Yeah, I think Cam kind of exaggerates his role at Wild Wildlife. He kind of worked there sometimes.
But since Lou went missing, Cam no longer works at the sanctuary, correct?
Yes.
Now, Ms. Baja, I want to talk about that will that you mentioned. It leaves everything in Lou's estate to you, correct?
Yes.
That means you got all of his money.
Yes.
All of his property.
Yes.
You even got his sanctuary.
It was our sanctuary. We ran it together, but yes, in the end.
Now, Ms. Baja, that temporary restraining order that we talked about, well, it was signed on June 12th, 2012, correct?
Yes.
And this will that leaves you as the sole beneficiary was signed on June 14th, 2012.
Yes.
Ms. Baja, that's just 2 days from the time Lou sought a restraining order against you until you suddenly inherit his entire estate.
That's correct.
And you're the one who had him declared legally dead.
That's correct.
You got the sanctuary.
That's correct.
And the first thing you did after having Lou declared legally dead was cash out his $5 million life insurance policy, correct?
To carry on our life's work, yes.
Ms. Baja, that's a yes to my question.
That is a yes.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, counsel. Any redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor.
Okay, may this witness be excused. Oh, I suppose she can't be excused, can she? Ms. Baja will have you hang around. Would the defense like to present its next witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Miss Chris Renard to the stand. May I proceed?
You may.
Good afternoon.
Good evening.
Good evening. My apologies, ma'am. Could you go ahead and please introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Hello, my name is Chris Renard.
What do you do for a living, Miss Renard?
I work for Summit Life Insurance Company as a death claims investigator.
What does it mean to be a death claims investigator for a life insurance company?
So essentially, before a life insurance policy can be paid out, it's my responsibility to do an investigation if there may be fraud or foul play involved in a particular claim.
How do you look for fraud?
I use my skills as a forensic document examiner.
What does it mean to be a forensic document examiner?
So essentially, I compare samples of handwriting to determine if a signature is authentic.
What happens if you find out a document is inauthentic or forged?
Well, at that point, I notify the life insurance company that there's potentially fraud or forgery involved, and the life insurance claim isn't paid out.
How long have you been doing this?
20 years now.
What did you do for work before Summit Life Insurance?
So I actually worked for the Statesville Bureau of Investigation as a forensic document examiner before beginning work as a death claims investigator.
Other than your work experience, do you have any education in the field?
So I actually graduated from Summit College with a degree in criminology, and then I graduated from the Statesville Police Academy.
Do you hold any certifications in the field of forensic document examination?
Yes, so the Board of Forensic Document Examiners has certified me for forensic document analysis, and the Association of Certified Fraud Specialists has also granted me a certification.
So do you participate in any continuing education?
I do. I have yearly workshops, and I have basic continuing education related to document analysis, and I have continuing education regarding insurance claim investigations.
Have you ever been asked by this court to testify as an expert?
I have.
Do you always testify for the defense as you're doing here today?
No. So I've testified a total of 25 times, and one of those was for the prosecution, and 24 of those times was on behalf of the life insurance company I currently work for.
Ma'am, I want to move on and talk about today's case. How did you become involved?
So when Karen Baja made a claim on Lou Donaldson's life insurance claim, I was responsible for conducting a forensic investigation into whether Summit Life Insurance Company is allowed to pay out the will to Miss Baja.
Were you able to reach a conclusion after conducting that investigation?
I was.
Before we get into that, I need to take a step back. What facts and data did you rely upon when coming to that conclusion?
So during my investigation, I wanted to look at several pieces of facts and data in order to really get a broad scope of what was going on. So the initial things I looked at were statements regarding Karen Baja's alleged behavior surrounding the time of Lou Donaldson's disappearance. I wanted to look at the police investigation, and I wanted to look at Lou Donaldson's will. And I wanted to look at verified known samples of Lou Donaldson's signature in my investigation.
So was all of that information sufficient for an investigator like yourself to come to a conclusion?
It was, yes.
Did you use any principles and methods when conducting your investigation?
I did. So I wanted to use the standard methods that would, be used in any such forensic investigation. And part of those methods included a complete handwriting analysis of Lou Donaldson's signature.
Are those kinds of means and methods reliably applied by experts in the field?
Yes, they are.
Ma'am, did you reliably apply that handwriting analysis using the facts and data of today's case?
I did.
Will all of the opinions you give here today be held to a reasonable degree of professional certainty?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Ms. Pride. Your Honor, at this time, we offer Ms. Renard as an expert in forensic document examination, qualified to give her opinion regarding the authenticity of the signature on Lou Donaldson's last will and testament.
Any objection from the plaintiffs?
Your Honor, as to that qualification, we have no objection.
All right. The court will accept her as such. You may continue.
All right, ma'am, let's dive into that conclusion. What was the first step you took when conducting your analysis?
So I wanted to take known samples of Lou Donaldson's signature and compare those to the signature on the purported will.
What samples of Lou's writing did you use?
So I pulled a sample of Lou Donaldson's signature from the life insurance claim he filed with us in 2005. And then I wanted to pull the signature I did pull the signature from Lou Donaldson's driver's license for comparison purposes.
What were you able to conclude when comparing the writing samples to the signature on the will?
I concluded that it was the signature on the will was likely Lou Donaldson's signature.
How did you come to that conclusion?
So I found that there were sufficient similarities between the signatures on the known signature samples and the signature on the will.
At any point, okay, you can continue, ma'am. My apologies.
I was just going to say, and that ultimately led me to believe that the signature was likely authentic.
At any point during your investigation, did you find any evidence suggesting that the will may have been forged?
Well, certainly there were differences in the signature, and there are several factors that can account for those differences: age, health condition, the instrument being used to sign the will. But ultimately, the differences led me to believe that the evidence was inconclusive at best.
So what does that mean in regards to your investigation?
Ultimately, although it is a possibility that the will may have been forged, there isn't enough evidence to make that determination, to definitively say so.
Did you review any other evidence suggesting possible forgery of that will?
I did. So I did receive a bizarre letter claiming that it was from a Samantha Lane.
Who's Samantha Lane?
She's a woman that I interviewed in the process of my investigation who was an alleged witness to Lou Donaldson's will.
What did you talk about with Samantha Lane?
So I confirmed the details of the will.
Can you expand on those details?
Miss Lane essentially told me that she saw Lou Donaldson sign the will when I spoke to her in person.
So you just mentioned that you got a bizarre note from Samantha Lane. Can you tell us about that?
Yes. So a few weeks after speaking with Miss Lane in person, I received this bizarre note claiming to be from her, indicating that she was essentially coerced into signing the will.
Objection, Your Honor.
What's the objection?
Best evidence, if I could explain that for you.
Certainly.
Your Honor, that note is an exhibit in today's record. And if they want to discuss the contents of that note, the best evidence of what the contents of that note are is the note itself. So to discuss the contents, that note should be offered into evidence.
Counsel, Your Honor, may I respond?
You may.
We're fine with entering the whole note into evidence if opposing counsel wants to, but all we're really focused on here is the fact that the note relayed a message which indicated that Samantha Lane was coerced into affirming that she saw the will be signed. That's all we're gonna mention from that note.
And Your Honor, that is what we would ask, that if we're going to discuss the contents of the note, that the jury just be allowed to see it for themselves.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to allow defendants to put on the case that they want. And if they want to admit the note, then we can talk about that at that point in time. And certainly if plaintiffs want to admit the note during a cross-examination, that would be acceptable as well. So I'm going to overrule that objection for the time being.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, ma'am, I'll ask it again. You mentioned that Samantha Lane wrote you a note indicating that she had been coerced into signing that will. Were you ever able to follow up with Samantha Lane?
So ultimately, I did attempt to contact Miss Lane after receiving this note in the process of my investigation, but she never got back to me.
So you have a will that appears to be genuine, and then you get this bizarre note from Samantha Lane. Did you do anything else to investigate Lou Donaldson's disappearance?
Well, I obviously wanted to continue in my investigation. And so the next step for me was looking into the police investigation that was still active at the time.
Why did you look into the police investigation?
I wanted to do a thorough analysis of whether there was foul play involved in this claim.
Were you able to find any evidence of foul play?
No, not at that time.
From your review, did the police find any evidence of foul play?
From my knowledge of the police investigation, no, there was no evidence of foul play.
Was that important to your investigation?
Yes. Ultimately, my job is to determine if foul play is involved. If foul play is involved, a life insurance claim cannot be paid out.
So what does that have to do with Karen Baja?
Well, Miss Baja has never been charged with a crime. I learned from looking into the investigation that Miss Baja was never even listed as a suspect in Lou Donaldson's disappearance in the police investigation.
Did you ultimately decide to pay out that policy?
I did.
Thank you, Ms. Renard. Your Honor, I have nothing further at this time.
Any cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
You may.
Good evening, Ms. Renard. I've just got a few questions for you. Now, you were first asked to come on to this case by the CEO of your company. Isn't that right?
Yes.
And specifically, he asked you to look at whether or not this defendant killed Lou Donaldson and whether or not she forged his will. Weren't those the questions?
Those were the two questions posed by my CEO, yes.
Now, at the end of the day, after your investigation, you were the one who recommended that the $5 million policy get paid out.
Yes, I conducted a thorough investigation and answered my CEO's questions, and I was able to make that determination.
And of course, you'd hate to be wrong about that determination, wouldn't you?
It doesn't affect me, counselor.
Well, it would affect your company, because if you were wrong, that would cost your company $5 million, wouldn't it?
Sure.
Now, as part of your investigation, you found that this defendant, she submitted her claim for life insurance on August 18th, 2017, didn't she?
That's correct. That was 5 years and a day after Lou Donaldson's disappearance.
It appears we may have lost Mr. Stirrup.
I was about to say, Judge, I'm experiencing some technical difficulties as well. I'm not really, I don't know if the opposing counsel connection dropped off or.
Kind of looks like that might be the case. Let's see if he,
Is my connection still okay? Can you still hear?
yeah, I think that
Okay.
I haven't seen an issue with anybody's connection on this end. Is Ms. Stuharten here with us? Did we lose everybody? Oh, there she is.
Yes, Your Honor, I believe my co-counsel is working on his technical difficulties. I think he might have gotten kicked off of the Zoom call at this time.
Okay. Well, let's wait and see if he tries to rejoin here. Are you guys in the same building or are you separated?
He's in the room next to me, and it looks like he's trying to get back on.
Okay. Well, if that's not successful, then maybe you can just take over your computer and we can do it that way.
Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. Stuhartner, are you still there?
Yes, Your Honor.
Maybe it'd be a good idea to bring him back in on your computer, just so he doesn't lose momentum and what he's got going on here.
Yes, Your Honor. We'll switch right now. Thank you.
Okay. Sure.
All right. Can everybody see and hear me okay?
We can.
All right. I'm not Molly Sue, but we'll make it work for now. I don't know what happened, but my computer surely didn't like it.
Fair enough. We'll make note of the fact that you're not Molly.
Now, Mr. Nard, I was just asking you. Now, you noted that it was the same day that Karen Baja had her husband declared dead that she filed for $5 million with your company, right?
I did notice that. Yes, it's unusual. It's not something we typically see in claims, but after 5 years, it's not our place to judge when a person decides to make a claim on a life insurance policy.
Now, when you started to look into this, you looked at Lou Donaldson's friends, his family, his business associates too, didn't you?
This is correct.
And you found that they haven't seen him, they haven't heard from him since the day he disappeared.
Well, that's correct. No one knows where he is. No one knows his whereabouts. A body hasn't even been found.
You looked at his bank account too, didn't you?
I did.
You saw that there hasn't been a single transaction on that account since the day he disappeared.
That's correct.
Now, let's just be clear. You weren't with this defendant on the night that Lou Donaldson disappeared, were you?
No, I can't say I was.
So you don't know exactly where she was?
No, I can't say I do, but I can say that to the extent of my knowledge during my investigation, I found out that there was an alibi, and I found out that she was not listed as a suspect in the police investigation.
Well, let's talk about what you may or may not know about that alibi. Now, an alibi, that's when somebody claims to be somewhere else at the time the crime was committed, right?
That's correct.
You don't know where this defendant was when the crime was committed.
No, counselor, I don't know, but someone else is claiming to know.
You won't tell us who that someone else is, will you?
That's not my place to tell you.
That's a no. You won't tell us who it is that's claiming that she has an alibi.
No, counselor, I will not tell you.
Objection, Your Honor. Pursuant to Rule 403, may I be heard?
You may.
Your Honor, this is a private investigator and this is a death claims investigator. For her to be questioned about her confidential sources in this courtroom, it's substantially more prejudicial than any probative value it presents here. This is a death claims investigator who happens to have confidential sources. To question her, to disclose them to this jury, it does not have probative value, and it's substantially outweighed by unfair prejudice.
Overruled.
So, Mr. Nard, I just want to make sure that the jury understands what's happening here. You're telling them that this defendant has an alibi, that somebody told you that, but you're not willing to say who's making that claim.
I retain that information from the sheriff's office, counselor.
Mr. Nard, I'm going to ask you to answer the question. You won't actually tell us who it was that made the claim.
Because I don't know that, counselor, respectfully, I'm not able to tell you because I do not know who made the claim. I can tell you where I got the information, and that was from the sheriff's office.
So somebody told you this defendant has an alibi, but you don't know who that somebody is.
I've answered your question, but no, I do not know who the exact person is. I know I retain the information from the sheriff's office in my investigation.
Let's talk about what else you may or may not know from the sheriff's office.
Okay.
The sheriff's office, they still consider this investigation to be ongoing, right?
Yes, to the extent of my knowledge.
And as a result, you haven't actually laid your eyes on a single piece of evidence that they've collected.
No, because the investigation is still active and therefore I cannot.
You can't tell us what information the police may or may not have, or at least you have no firsthand knowledge of it.
I have no firsthand knowledge of the information that is confidential and that they refuse to give me. What they gave me factored into my investigation.
Well, let's talk about what you do have firsthand knowledge
Okay.
You did assess the will that was produced by the defendant, right?
I did analyze the will, yes.
Now, you saw on that will where it said, if I should die or disappear, then
Yes.
now, as a life insurance investigator, surely you've seen a lot of wills over your career, haven't you?
I sure have.
You've never seen that phrase.
Not in the wills I've looked at, no.
And you looked at the witnesses to those wills as well.
I do.
You talked about somebody named Samantha Lane on direct examination. Did I remember that correctly?
That's correct.
You said you received a note from her.
That's correct.
Now, I understand you have an electronic notebook in front of you and it contains that exhibit. Could you pull it up for me and just let me know when you're there?
I sure can. Okay.
That's the note you received, right?
That's correct.
Nothing about it looks to be changed.
No.
Your Honor, at this time we offer the note from Samantha Lane into evidence.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor, to hearsay.
Counsel, response to hearsay?
Your Honor, opposing counsel has opened the door. They've already offered these statements onto the record. We're just showing the jury the actual source so they can know where they came from.
Your Honor, overruled.
In that letter, Ms. Lane signed it saying that she was coerced into signing the will. Is that right?
She wrote, that was written in the letter, yes. I can't verify if that was actually Miss Lane that wrote that, but that is what is written in the letter in front of me, yes.
That is signed Samantha Lane at the bottom.
That's what it appears to be signed, yes.
I'd like to talk about the actual handwriting analysis you did in this case. You compared two verified signatures to the signature on the will, didn't you?
To clarify, Lou Donaldson's signatures?
Yes.
Yes, I did.
Okay, let's take a look at those. Now, specifically, I want to start by taking a look at those D's at the front of Donaldson.
Okay.
Now, it's your testimony today that those D's were likely all written by the same person.
That was the conclusion I was able, the conclusion I was able to reach, counselor, was that there were sufficient similarities.
You thought there were sufficient similarities between that second D in Donaldson across all the signatures?
Yes.
And the last O in Donaldson. Mr. Bernard, it's your testimony for the jury that it's possible the same person wrote those three O's?
Yes, counselor. There were sufficient similarities. Like I said, there's several factors that can go into a signature being slightly different. So I'm not going to say they're perfectly similar, but what I will say is that there were sufficient similarities to warrant me authorizing the life insurance claim to be paid out.
Your Honor, we have no further questions from this witness.
All right, any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Renard, you were asked a lot about the police investigation into Ms. Baja on direct examination. To the best of your knowledge, has Ms. Baja's case ever been brought before a grand jury since 2012?
To the extent of my knowledge, no.
Speculation, may I explain?
Sure.
Your Honor, grand jury proceedings are conducted in secret. This witness, there's no way she could have any knowledge. It would be impossible.
Counsel, response?
Your Honor, I can rephrase the question.
All right.
Mr. Renard, you mentioned that this case has been active since 2012, right?
Correct.
At any point since 2012, has Karen Baja ever been charged with a crime in regards to Lou Donaldson's disappearance?
To the extent of my knowledge, no. As I stated before, she's not even listed as a suspect in this ongoing investigation that's been going on for several years now.
Ma'am, you were also questioned about those three signatures that you used for your handwriting comparison. Why would somebody's handwriting look different over time?
Like I said, counselor, there's age, there's health conditions, there's the instrument that was used to sign the will. You have to take into consideration any of those factors when you're looking at a signature, especially over the course of several years. I pulled the insurance policy signature, which was one of the known signatures from 2005. It's several years later in 2000, when I analyzed these signatures, anything could have changed in that time.
Ma'am, as a handwriting expert, is it abnormal for somebody's signature to not look the exact same way every single time they sign something?
No, it's not abnormal.
Thank you, Mr. Renard. I have nothing further.
All right, may this witness be excused?
Yes, Your Honor, we have nothing further from this witness.
All right, would the defense like to present its next witness?
Your Honor, at this time, the defense has no motions to make, and we rest our case in chief.
All right. Anything we need to take care of before we go into closing arguments?
None from the plaintiff, Your Honor. We would like a time check as well as a recess to see if we can get this technology sorted out.
Okay, what's our time looking like?
We have 13 minutes and 57 seconds remaining for the plaintiff and 10 minutes and 51 seconds remaining for the defense.
Sorry, 13 for the plaintiff and 10 for the defense, you said?
13:57 for the plaintiff and 10:51 for defense.
All right, so like 14 and 11. All right. Okay, how long do you think you need?
Your Honor, can we take 10?
We can take 10. Does that work for plaintiff?
That works for us.
Okay, so we'll come back here at about 10 till.
Perfect. Thank you, so.
Yes, Your
Thank
Honor.
you. See you soon.
Your Honor, in order to get the technology right, we're going to have to disconnect and reconnect in just a moment. So if we could just be let back into the room once we do so.
The old turn it off and turn it back on trick.
That's the hope.
That's fine. Did you get that computer to work?
We've got it sorted out well enough, but I think we'll have a little bit of work to do once this is all over to get it right for the long term.
Fair enough. Okay. Is everyone ready to proceed with closing arguments?
Yes, Your Honor.
Oh, sorry, I think we missed you there, Mr. Stirrup.
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff is ready to proceed.
Okay. Well, then let us begin whenever you're ready.
Your Honor, I just want to note that I'll save any remaining time for rebuttal and just ask that the timekeeper come on and give me a 1-minute warning when we get down to it.
Certainly. Is that okay with the timekeeper?
Yes, we can give a 1-minute warning. Would you like me to do that on screen or in the chat? What would be most effective?
Just come on screen. That's fine.
Got it.
Thank you.
For clarification, are we doing 14 minutes for plaintiff and 11 minutes for defense, Your Honor?
Yeah, let's just do that. Make it easy.
Okay.
Whenever you're ready, counsel.
May it please the court? He's never coming home. Not I hope he comes home. Not I still pray that he comes home. He's never coming home. Those are the words of the defendant in this case. A woman who combined divorce, desperation, and deception into a deadly combination that she used to kill Lou Donaldson. Now, members of the jury, Lou Donaldson was by no means a perfect man. In fact, you might have heard some things about him today that you just didn't like. But you know what? Lou was somebody's dad. And nobody deserves to lose their dad. I mean, this was somebody who went from used cars to a multi-million-dollar business. And all he really wanted in his life was somebody to share it all with. He thought he found that someone in the defendant, but he realized he just made a mistake. And he made another big mistake when he told the defendant he wanted a divorce. Because when he said that, he created a very scared and desperate woman. A woman whose desperation would turn into violence. Now let's make sure we're clear, members of the jury. This is not a murder trial. Ms. Harmon and I, we're not state prosecutors, and we can't put this defendant behind bars, no matter how much she might deserve to be there. We're here to represent Cam Donaldson, Lou's only surviving son. Cam's had a rough day. He's had a rough 8 years. He lost his dad. He's come in here today, and the defense has accused him of everything, including being a liar, even though they couldn't prove he lied. You see, despite their constant allegations, he's not here for the money. He's here for his dad. He's been looking for his dad for 8 straight years. He's been looking for the truth. Now he knows the truth. He knows that this defendant is the reason his dad never came home. Today, members of the jury, his search for the truth, it comes to an end. Today, he's searching for justice. As Ms. Harmon explained to you, this is a very special type of trial. It's called wrongful death. And what that means is that throughout today, we've proven 4 elements. That Lou Donaldson is dead. That this defendant caused his death with intentional conduct. That Cam Donaldson has suffered damages and that it was the defendant's actions that caused those damages. And in a moment, the judge is going to talk to you. He's going to tell you how we had the burden to prove those elements to you. But listen carefully. Because the judge will explain, look, it's okay to think that there are a lot of possibilities in this case. What it comes down to is if you think it's more likely than not that this defendant is the reason Lou Donaldson didn't come home, it's your responsibility to hold her liable. Now let's walk through those elements together. And we'll start with the most obvious. Members of the jury, Lou Donaldson has passed away. Nobody's seen him. Nobody's heard from him. There's been no activity on his bank account. The defendant told us he's never coming home. She even had him declared dead. And why would a grieving spouse have her husband declared dead if she thought he wasn't? You see, this case, it comes down to one simple question. Why? Why did this defendant kill Lou Donaldson? And to understand the answer to that question, we have to start at the divorce. You see, Lou Donaldson, he took this defendant in at her time of need. He built her $1 million lifestyle that most of us, we could just dream about. That's why when he said that little word, divorce, the panic set in. The money, the houses, the cars, the business, the animals, the sanctuary, all of it was about to be taken away from her. But she wouldn't let him do that to her. And she didn't care what it took. She didn't care who got hurt. Let's look at the timeline in this case. Lou Donaldson was last seen alive at 6 o'clock on August 17th by his son Cam. And 9 hours later, the defendant wants you to believe she's out at the grocery store at 3 o'clock in the morning buying Tiger formula. Does that make sense, members of the jury? A grocery store that's open at 3 in the morning that sells Tiger formula? I mean, she wants us to believe she just left her phone so we couldn't track her. She wants us to believe she was out of supplies even though the bank records show they bought $1,000 worth the day before. She wants us to believe a stranger happened to stop on the side of the road at 3 o'clock in the morning to let her use her phone, and she thought the most logical thing to do would be to call not her husband, her brother. You see, it's not just strange circumstances. It's not just some weird events, and it's not bad luck, members of the jury. It's evidence. It's evidence that the defendant hasn't been truthful with us. It's evidence that she wasn't at some grocery store that was open at 3 o'clock in the morning. She was busy making sure Lou Donaldson wouldn't come home. Think about what happens next. 36 hours after her husband is seen for the last time, she goes to get his will. Does that make sense, members of the jury? Is that what a grieving spouse does? I mean, stop for a minute to think about this circumstance. You heard her today. Her husband, he goes off on these trips all the time. He just hops on a plane, takes off, doesn't call her, doesn't text her, and he was gone for a lot more than just 36 hours. And after all of these years for this happening, she never once reports him missing. And yet this time she reports him missing just a day later. What was different? Jury, this time it was different because she didn't have to wait. She knew he was missing. She made sure he was missing. I mean, she said he was missing, but she sure didn't search for him. She didn't call him. She didn't go out and look for him. She didn't even call the police. You see, the first thing she did was go to get his will. And she was desperate to get that will because she knew to get away with it, it would have to end in deception. Deception. Members of the jury, the will you saw today, that is not Lou Donaldson's will. That's a forgery. And we had an expert come in here and explain why, but frankly, members of the jury, you didn't need experts to know this will is a forgery. Just take a look at it for yourself. Lou Donaldson didn't write that O. This will, it doesn't even make sense. I mean, the defendant is really asking you to believe today that on June 12th, her husband filed for a restraining order against her, said he wanted a divorce, said he was scared of her. And then she wants you to believe that 2 days later, he changed his will to give her everything he owned? It doesn't make sense because it's not true. And the deception, members of the jury, it just doesn't end there. She brought you an insurance investigator to talk to you. She said she knew all of this stuff about the police in this case, about an alibi. But remember when I asked her where she got that from? Remember how she acted. Remember how she said, we couldn't know where she got that from. Like we weren't entitled to know the truth from her today. She said she didn't know where she got that from. Like she didn't even care what the truth was. The defendant got on the stand and she wanted you to believe that everybody was out to get her. That Cam lied. She said Taylor Pride lied. She said Exotic Bob died. Her counsel in a minute may accuse me of lying. Members of the jury, it's not some conspiracy theory. Lou didn't take off in some plane that nobody's ever seen before. Her excuses, they don't make sense because they're not true. The only evidence of anyone not being truthful in this courtroom, well, it points at the defendant. Now, in this trial, your job isn't just to determine whether this defendant is responsible. It's also for how much. Members of the jury, let's clear this up. Cam Donaldson, he's not demanding $10 million from you today. He wants justice. But unfortunately, we can't bring his dad back. And look, we know deciding how much, that's an impossible task. How much is a human life worth? How much would just one more day be worth to Cam Donaldson? Would another day be worth $100? 1,000? How many days did Lou have left? Members of the jury, that's your decision. Now, in a moment, as defendant's counsel gets up here to talk, I'd like you to keep the words of her defendant in mind. I want you to remember when Lou told Karen he wanted a divorce and she threatened his life. I want you to remember when she walked into an Exotic Bob's office and she said, I'll do to you exactly as I did to my husband. I will feed you to the cats just like I did him. Remember when she looked at us and she said, he's never coming home. You know, at the beginning of this trial, we asked you 3 simple questions that would explain this case. Who was afraid of divorce? Who was desperate to keep her lifestyle? And who was it that resorted to deception? Members of the jury, the evidence only shows us one answer in this trial, and it's the defendant. When the defendant told us that Lou Donaldson would never come home, she knew it was true because she made sure of it herself. That's why when you render your verdict, members of the jury, announce a verdict to the world that does justice by Lou Donaldson and hold her liable. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. For the defense, whenever you're ready.
Yes. May I proceed?
You may.
This is not a case about murder. This is a case about money. A case about a son consumed by greed, growing to hate the woman who got the money. Even after everything points to the reality that no one really knows what happened to Lou Donaldson, Cam Donaldson continues to blame Karen Baja. Cam continues to concoct baseless conspiracies. Cam continues to tell you a story that simply doesn't match the evidence. And that is the problem with the plaintiff's case. You see, it was their burden to bring to you more than just a story. They had to prove it to you. And to do that, they had to prove, one, that Lou Donaldson is dead, and two, that Karen Baja intentionally or recklessly caused Lou's death. So let's talk about those one by one. First, the plaintiff has failed to prove that Lou Donaldson is dead. Remember, the plaintiff is suing Miss Baja for a wrongful death. But the plaintiff failed to provide you with the most basic evidence necessary for proving a wrongful death action. There's no body. This is a wrongful death case without a dead man. To this day, the Pioneer Police Department consider Lou Donaldson a missing person. His case has never been classified as a homicide. The police don't know what happened to Lou Donaldson, and neither does anyone else throughout this trial. Now, you heard plaintiff tell you that Lou is never coming home. Members of the jury, that may be true, but no one has proof of that. And the more important question here is why? If Lou Donaldson is not coming home, why? And that is something no one throughout this trial has been able to answer. The plaintiff has relied on guesswork, but in a court of law, guesswork doesn't cut it. So let's talk about the evidence that the plaintiff claims proves that Lou Donaldson is dead. First, they told you that you know he's dead because Ms. Baja had him legally declared dead. But the truth is, members of the jury, this is just a piece of paper. A piece of paper that says when someone has been missing for 5 years, that missing person's property can be distributed. All this piece of paper tells us is that Ms. Baja, 5 years after her husband disappeared, she wanted closure. She wanted to move on with her life. But that's not all. The plaintiff also wants you to believe that Lou Donaldson is dead because no one in Pioneer County has seen him for 8 years. Well, members of the jury, by the plaintiff's logic, anyone you haven't seen in 8 years is dead. But you heard about the type of man that Lou Donaldson was. And since a picture's worth 1,000 words, we brought you a recent picture that sums it all up. Lou was somewhat of a loner. He was a secretive man who would go on business trips without telling his family. We don't know how many planes he had. We don't know how much money he had hidden away. What we do know is that Lou Donaldson had a mistress in Costa Rica and his van was found at an airport. Is Lou in Costa Rica? I can admit I don't know, because there is just as much evidence showing that Lou Donaldson is dead as there is that he is in Costa Rica. None. Now, members of the jury, if you find that the plaintiff has failed to prove that Lou Donaldson is dead, this case is over. You don't have to look any further because the plaintiff failed to prove their case. But if you find that there's enough evidence suggesting that Lou Donaldson is dead, that doesn't necessarily mean the plaintiff won their case. Remember, they have to prove the second part of Cam's story, that Karen Baja killed Lou Donaldson, or in legal terms, that Karen's intentional or reckless conduct caused Lou Donaldson's death. Now, members of the jury, we know that the plaintiff has failed here as well, because think of all the questions we still cannot answer. If Lou Donaldson is dead, when did he die? Where did he die? How did he die? When, where, how? The plaintiff has been unable to answer all of these questions. The best they could give you was Cam's stories, Cam's guessworks, Cam's conspiracies. What they haven't been able to give you is proof. And when you accuse someone of being a murderer, the law demands that you provide proof, and that is exactly what the plaintiff has failed to do. And there's a reason that they couldn't answer any of those questions for you, and it's because Miss Baja didn't kill Lou Donaldson. Now, they told you that you know that Karen killed Lou because of the restraining order that Lou filed against her. They claim that this document, this is the evidence they needed to win their case. But members of the jury, the plaintiff is ignoring the big red letters at the top of the document. The court denied the TRO. The court itself did not find this threat credible. The court decided that Lou was safe around Karen Baja. And you heard from the defendant herself how much she loved her husband, how much she would never harm or threaten him. Now, the plaintiff told you that you know Lou Donaldson is dead because of a man named Exotic Bob claims that Karen threatened him and said that Lou was dead. However, members of the jury, let's not forget, Exotic Bob blames the defendant for why he is incarcerated. He would say anything to get back at her for what he blames her for. So members of the jury, without any evidence proving that there's been a death or a murder, you may be wondering, why are we here today? Well, we're here today because Cam Donaldson wants $10 million, and this is his chance to get it. Cam has tried to tell you that he's here for justice, but at the end of the day, members of the jury, he is still asking you for $10 million. So let's talk about why Cam chose Karen. It's because Cam was angry that his father left Karen the $10 million. And Cam was jealous that he didn't get a dime. But Cam shouldn't be angry with my client. You heard how it was Lou's own intention to leave that money for her. How he wanted her to keep the wild wildlife sanctuary going. And members of the jury, that's exactly what she's done. Now, let's not forget that Cam waited until 5 years after his father went missing to hire a private investigator. And suddenly he had a story that Lou said, look into Karen. But members of the jury, don't forget, he didn't make that statement until his deposition in 2019, when the money was at stake. Well, when that story didn't work, Cam also told you that a break-in occurred at Wild Wildlife on August 19th. That at 6 a.m., Cam went to Wild Wildlife when an alarm went off and saw Karen holding the lockbox that contained the will. Members of the jury, when I crossed Cam, you heard that there was no police report, there were no eyewitnesses, and there was no record from the alarm company to document this incident. In fact, the only person who will tell you that this incident ever happened is Cam himself, and that's because it never happened. No record, no hard evidence, no break-in. Now, That's not where Cam's story stopped, because Cam also told you that the real will that you saw in today's court was a forgery. And Cam said, you know that because it's the proof is in the handwriting. And you had 2 expert witnesses that testified at the validity of the will. Taylor Pride came before you, the plaintiff's expert, and said that it was forged because of the handwriting. But members of the jury, Taylor Pride didn't bring you her own analysis today. What Taylor Pride brought to you was an analysis based off of what Chris Renard, our expert, had conducted. Additionally, what you did see from Taylor Pride was a singular comparison of the signature. Where was the comparison to the note? Where was the comparison to the TRO? Members of the jury, don't you think that if that bolstered their theory, that they would have brought that to you? But they didn't. And it's because the will wasn't forged, and they know it. And Chris Renard didn't try to sugarcoat things for you. Chris told you it was inconclusive. And as a person who works for an insurance company, it's her own job to find a reason not to pay out that money. And yet the company still paid out. Now, in a moment, the opposing counsel is going to come before you, and they're going to have the last word, and I'm not permitted to respond. So I want to leave you with this final thought. This is not a case about murder. This is a case about money. And no amount of plaintiff's anger or jealousy or hatred towards Ms. Baja makes her a killer. Find the defendant, Karen Baja, not liable.
Thank you, counsel. Would the plaintiff like a rebuttal?
Yes, Your Honor, briefly.
All right.
36 hours after her husband went missing, she went to get his will. There's only one reason to go get somebody else's will, and it's because you know they're dead. You see, there's a reason she didn't call Lou, a reason she didn't look for Lou, and a reason she didn't grieve for Lou. It's because she knew. It's because she made sure that Lou, well, he's never coming home. Hold her liable. Thank you.
All right. This case will stand submitted to the jury. Nice job, everybody. Truly, this was a really well done round. I'm impressed with all 4 of you guys, and of course the witnesses as well. But truly, you 4 did very, very well. I'm really impressed.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Are you guys all 3 Ls?
No.
I am, Your Honor.
Okay.
I am, Your Honor. My co-counsel is not.
Got it. All right. Well, excellent work. I'm told that we're just supposed to let you guys go once we wrap up, and then we take care of the scoring and all that stuff, and you guys move on from here.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Hey, it is absolutely my pleasure. Truly, you guys did a great job. It's a pleasure watching you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank
All
you,
right.
guys.
Chase, your co-counsel, you guys did a really great job. It was really fun competing
Good
against you.
job, guys. Great trial.
Thank you. Bye.
Have a
Good luck to you guys.
Thank you.
Hey, bud.